first item would be the review of the data survey by Sherry Hyder, and she is virtual, and so we are going to eat while we allow her to present. Would that be fine? And then the rest we'll turn over to Superintendent Stevens. So, please.
Are we ready for me?
Yes.
We are, Sherry.
Perfect. So sorry, I couldn't hear the first little part. Good morning, Superintendent and President Ritchie, Board. I appreciate you letting me present virtually due to a little COVID issue, but hopefully we'll get this sent out to you as soon as we get finished this morning, and then you can delve into it as you wish. All right. So, who took our surveys? We asked them to respond as whether or not they were a teacher and employee, a parent, or a community member. And then there were 27 qualities that were listed, and they were asked to choose their top 10. And then there was also an open comment question. The survey was open for about 9 days, and we received 1,060 responses from Weber School District teachers and employees, 1,023 from parents, 73 community members, so a total of 2,156 respondents in just that short period of time. Overall, when you look at the three different groups combined, the most important qualities out of those 27, 54% of the respondents, or 1,236 people, said that one of the most important qualities was that the new superintendent should inspire trust, have high levels of self-confidence and optimism, and model high standards of integrity and personal performance. 48% willing to listen to input but can make a decision when necessary. 41% effective communication skills. 39% strongly committed to a student-first philosophy in all decisions. And then 30.6% is experience with the different employee groups. So that was all groups put together. The least important qualities that were identified, so these were the ones with the lowest ratings, were commitment to community visibility with a high interest in a broad range of community groups and organizations, demonstrated ability to integrate instructional technology into the curriculum, a mutually beneficial relationship between the business community and the school district, committed to keeping the Board of Education informed, and then has earned a doctoral degree from an accredited institution, so 7.4%. Interestingly, Superintendent Stevens asked me if these were near the bottom of the 27 qualities that were identified, that people could choose from. And I looked at it a little bit further last night. The ones highlighted in yellow, they were actually number 2. So the second one down was actually number 2 in the list. And the earned a doctoral degree was number 5 in the list. So they were right up near the top. We wondered if perhaps moving toward the bottom of the list caused people to choose them least often. And that didn't seem to be the case. The teachers and employees chose the inspiring trust and high levels of self-confidence
Sherry,
as their
just a
number.
second. Robert,
Yeah.
Robert had a question.
Oh, so sorry.
Yeah, I wondered about that too, on where they're on the list, because when I do mine, there's so many good qualities, it's hard to give your top 10. And when I got down to the bottom, I go, oops, and I had to circle back around and redo a couple things, you know what I mean? So I like that you went back and looked at that.
Yeah, I think that was an important thing to look at, and luckily the survey design allowed people to check and uncheck things as many times as they wanted to as they read through. So I think that's an important point, Robert.
So if someone checked 14 and they didn't limit themselves to 10, then what happens?
So it was a qualified response, and they had to provide at least one. If they provided more than 10, there was an error message that came back and told them to choose only 10.
Oh.
Yeah. All right. So the interesting thing there is the inspiring trust was actually number 1 in all groups surveyed. So that's a very important quality that folks are looking for in the next superintendent. Willing to listen to input was 54.25 in the employee and teacher group. It was in the top 3 in all groups that were surveyed. Experience with employee groups was almost 49%. Effective communication skills was 45.66%. And that was number 4 in the parent group as well. Parents chose a lot of the same things. The trust was number 1 again, like we said. Strongly committed to a student-first philosophy. That was number 2 in both the parent and the community groups at 47.8%. Willing to listen to input, but can make a decision when necessary. And then effective communication skills rounded out the top 4 at 41.6%. The community members, again, there was only 73 people identified themselves as community members, but there's their list, leading with the trust and ending with possesses the leadership skills required to respond appropriately to an ethnically and culturally diverse community at 32.88%. We wanted to kind of take a look at what were the qualities that were identified as least important. If the color coding here helps you identify which ones were shared among groups. So again, these are the least important qualities as identified by the 3 different groups. So the teachers and employees, their 3rd lowest was earned a doctoral degree. Demonstrated ability to integrate instructional technology was the 2nd from the bottom. And then committed to keeping the Board of Education informed was the bottom at 5.66. Parents, committed to keeping the Board of Education informed was 9.58. Doctoral degree was 2nd. And then the ability to develop and maintain a mutually beneficial relationship between business community and the school district at 6.74. And you see the repetition there in the community. So some interesting things showed up there as items that people didn't value as heavily with the doctoral degree and the instructional technology. Those were a couple that surprised us. Looking at the comments, did a bit of a word cloud with them. So the bigger the words are, the more people responded. This was the comments left by the employees about anything else they wanted to make a comment on relative to the selection of the new superintendent. Without fail, people indicated that having prior classroom experience, and many of them even specified a number of years, was extremely important to them. Student learning first, lots and lots of them identified that we need someone else just like Dr. Stevens, and I couldn't agree more. Visionary, a good listener, someone who paid attention to the culture of our community, the family first. That was called out in several cases. Someone who is fiscally responsible. Equity was commented on a number of times, as was a solid knowledge of special education law and procedures. The parent comments, student learning was number 1. Educational experience was right in there as well. They felt like they needed to have a long, successful history as an educator in Weber School District. Parents also believed that whoever the new superintendent is needs to be a strong supporter of our teachers and listen to parents. Parents did call out Dr. Stevens again. There were many very kind comments. Integrity, transparency. Special ed was again called out by the parent group as an area that the superintendent needs to be very well versed in. Trauma informed was at the top, or not at the top of the list, but it was on the list as well. Honesty, equity, and equality as well.
Hey,
The community
Sherry,
comments.
Sherry,
Oh yeah.
got a question.
Huh?
A person can be an employee and a parent. Do they get to fill out twice or just once?
So if they used a different email address, they could. We asked them to identify the one group they wanted to fill the survey out representing. If they chose to do the survey again, they would have had to have used a different email address.
Okay.
Yeah, but I agree. Many people are parents and employees, and so, yeah. Due to the fact that there were only 73 community responses, it really doesn't make sense to do a word cloud. There just wasn't enough there. But their comments were that they wanted a student advocate, lots of years in the classroom with a focus on student learning, equity, transparency, and someone who supports and empowers teachers. Just for you to review later, I've included all comments over here on the right side. If you click on that, there's 3 tabs, and it's separated by the employee group, the community, and the parents. And then on the left side, you can look at the ranking for all 27 of the different qualities that were listed there in order for each of the different response groups. So that's something you can peruse through when you want to get some deeper information. So do you have any questions about the data that came back from our survey?
Board?
Sherry, do you have any more that you'd like to carry on? We have a little time available. If you felt rushed.
So I think that it might be interesting for you to look at some of the personal comments that were left. When you get a minute, there's some intriguing things that called out some areas that people had concerns, specifically special education, just a breadth of knowledge there. But by and large, everything was very, very, very positive about our culture. The Weber Way was called out in a number of different settings that people loved teaching here. It was split on the comments whether we should look inside or outside. About half the people that specified said stay inside where people know the culture, and others said go outside to find someone who's who brings a different line of thought. But anyway, I think it might be interesting for you to take a peek. This superintendent qualities, I don't know that will show up for you. Okay, so if you take a peek here, down at the bottom, it lists them in order of what was the most highly chosen to the lowest in each of the different groups. So you'll see all 27 of them individually ranked. But anything else you're wondering about or that I can do for you? Awesome. Well, thanks for letting me spend a few minutes with you. I'll get this sent out to you so that you can review it at your leisure.
Very thorough, very.
Can't click on that.
Yeah.
You got about 9 minutes, you can't go through that.
This will be helpful, board, as Richard comes up at 10 and start processing with you in terms of putting a brochure and announcement together. And I think these are, one of the things that Sherry and I talked about last night a little bit. I think back 15, 20 years ago, and that doctorate degree was imperative, and all 3 groups downplayed it just a little bit. I kind of want to mention to you also that all 27 qualities are important qualities. For all 27 are important qualities. So when you see one like has an understanding about how to integrate technology in the curriculum, that's an important quality. It's just not what was listed as one of the top 10 of those 27. But that one was a little surprising to me to see that the technology one fell a little bit in ranking of 27. The doctorate degree didn't seem to carry a lot of weight with people, and that's different than it was 15 years ago. It just was. So some interesting data points. I'm glad the board wanted to go through this part of the process. I think very informative. The feedback I've had just from people being able to do this has been very, very positive.
And Dr. Stevens, just one other comment that was very clear as you start looking through some of the data. The people who respond to surveys are usually in two polar opposite camps. They're usually either the folks who are really, really happy with what you're doing, or the folks who maybe fall onto the other side of that. And so as you read through some of the comments, I mean, you can clearly see how people fall out there. But 90%, probably even higher than that, of the comments just called out the real positive things that Weber School District does, and specifically praising Dr. Stevens.
Sherry, if I could, I hate surveys. But as I got into this survey, I realized it was one set. Only you had to go through that process. You know what I mean? If I'd have clicked out quicker, I'd have probably been disappointed. Having known, okay, because what the survey said was, please answer these questions, and I was anticipating another bank and another bank and another bank. So as you go through those 24, they are so close that it takes you time to click and unclick in order to get to the 10. And I thought it was done very well. Yes, exactly, Bruce. And I thought it was done very well. At the same time, I thought just having that one bank was powerful, like I said, in taking surveys. It just said, once you're done with these, you're done. You know, hey, could you go to the next page? It'll only take 25 minutes. Those ones I just don't do. So, job well done. Thank you. And valuable. Robert.
So, although the negative comments, and I agree with you, people have an axe to grind. It's my chance. I get a comment. You know what I mean? I'm hearing my voice double.
That's because Jan's
Sorry,
on.
Robert. I just wanted to get into it.
That scares us.
But anyway, but with that said, were there any negative comments that were, was there any pattern, or was there any cause for any
I'm
concern?
sorry.
You know what I mean? Did you hear me?
So, sorry, Robert, could you repeat that?
Even though the negative comments were a minority, were there any that were any trend or anything like that?
Oh dear, Trent, I'm not hearing anything now.
Robert, you
Now you gotta plug
Can you hear me now? Is that better?
Yeah.
Oh, good. Sorry if I've been spouting off without even using my mic. So even though the negative comments were a minority, and we know that people have an axe to grind, it's their chance to get on, were there any trends that might be interesting on the negatives?
Again, the thing that was called out most often, and I think it kind of makes sense, is the special education. Sometimes they felt like maybe they had to be very involved as parents, and you want them to be very involved. That's kind of what we ask of our parents. So that one came up most often. There was a little bit of, there were probably 20 comments out of the group that said something about making sure that teachers and administrators are accountable for their actions. And I'm sure that there's stories behind each one of those, but that came out in about 20 of the comments. But no, there was a lot of just individual experiential data that came from those. The vast majority just wanted us to be conscious, and wants the board to be conscious of the fact that we're talking about their children here, and the selection of a superintendent is critical to remember that this will impact their children and grandchildren and so forth. So it's more along those lines.
So there was nothing like, we don't want another Packers fan or anything like that?
That was only said twice, but
I walked in on Lori, and that was her comment. We don't want another pack. What's in your overnight oats, Robert?
It wasn't sugar. Sherry, thank you so much for that information.
She's gonna send that out to all
Thank
of
you,
us, so we
everybody.
can have that.
Yeah.
You're gonna send that out, right, Sherry, so we can access those? Okay, very well.
I'll do it right now.
I was thinking maybe we could do that within a minute, but we've eaten that up and now it's, we have a minute, so.
Thank you, Sherry.
Thank
That's
you,
very
Sherry.
good.
Absolutely.
Hey, Chris, I went out Wednesday morning and spent a couple hours at the transportation shop and enjoyed a breakfast burrito and talked to a lot of employees. And they were very appreciative that this survey went out. They felt like that was an opportunity for their voices to be heard and have some input in something that's a major process here in the district. So they're very appreciative of it.
Thank you. I'm going to tell you that had it not been for Superintendent Jacobson, putting in Superintendent Stevens, we wouldn't have it. But having Jeff be able to lead us through that, just help me broaden it from 7 of us to the community, to our employees, to the state. It's just the right thing to do. So thank you, Jeff. And thank you, Paul, for, I've heard the same thing from the ones that I've talked to.
There wasn't one negative comment. It was all very positive and it was all very grateful.
Well, and I just, let me just share something for the board as I look at the organization, look at the community, the whole organization. In the last 21 years, our school district's gone through this process one time. In the last 21 years, we've gone through this transition one time. This is not a process that our community and our organization is accustomed to. And so, you're going to sense, I think, just a little bit of that turbulence, that concern, because it's not something, and I think that's a tribute to the board, to have that kind of stability. But I'm seeing it a little bit. The process, I think, helps to ease some of those concerns because they see how transparent, how inclusive, how thorough, how impartial the board is. And I think that's vital, that just we sustain that throughout the entire process, that perception that this is a fair, impartial, thorough process that we're going through. So
Credibility is where I look at it, so thank you very much. Are we ready to move to, please, Superintendent, please take the next one, please.
thank you. For the record, this next item is something that we talked about, things happening very rarely. This is another one that only happens very rarely, and that is a redrawing of precinct maps. Typically, this is something that's done every 10 years in conjunction with the census. In 2010 and 11, our board did not go through it, and here's the reason why. In 2004, the legislature passed a law that said any school district with more than 20,000 students enrolled had to have 7 members on the board. Up to that time, there were only 5 members on the board. And so in 2005, our district went through this process of reapportioning the board member precinct boundaries. The term in the law is that each precinct boundary should be substantially equal. That's the term, and Daniel will get to that in just a moment. So actually, when I was put in 2011, one of the first phone calls I made was to the county to see, are we going through this process? And the county at that time said, as a school district, you actually have the option this time around because just 6 years ago you went through the process. When we went from a 5-person board to a 7-person board, all of that reapportionment so that substantially equal clause was met. And the board at that time chose not to then redo it. My point is that now that makes it in 2021, 16 years since we've gone through this process. And there's been some growth on the west side, changes in population. So Daniel Wade from Weaver County has just been so terrific to work with. Daniel is an expert with all of these things. And President, I'd recommend we turn the time to Daniel Wade from Weaver County to just process us through. I wonder, Daniel, are you more comfortable sitting, standing?
I'm fine.
And then you're going to work in conjunction with Trent with the maps? Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. So if you don't like these maps, I'm the one to blame. We'll just start with that. So get your food ready to throw at me if you need to. I'm just going to start basically with just an overview, as Dr. Stevens mentioned, of why we did this. And then I'll walk you through the process that we used to come up with the map that we have. So state and federal law both require any political unit that has districts to divide those districts into equal population, districts that are equal in population. So that's why we did this. So that's really what the basis of this was. Also with Utah Statute 20A-14-201, it is the responsibility of the Weber County Commissioners to realign and to approve the Weber School Board districts. So that is why I'm here today on behalf of the Weber County Commissioners, because we are the ones that drew the new boundaries for you, and they were approved on Tuesday. So basically, let's talk a little bit about this. We'll start with the substantially equal. Utah code says substantially equal, but it does not say what substantially equal is. So common practice amongst most municipalities and around the country is that a 5% deviation, either plus or minus, is acceptable when dealing with population. So we started with this by simply taking the overall population of the school district and divided it by 7. And that was my target population when we started to build these things.
And that's just the general population. It's not the student count.
It's general population based from the census data. So it has nothing to do with student count, has nothing to do with anything. It's simply population overall from the census data. So the criteria that we used, again, the substantial population, they also have to be as geographically compact as practical, and they have to be geographically contiguous. So those are the criteria that we had to use. There is also a hierarchy in terms of just in redistricting and an order with which things go. So the first order is the state redraws all of the state legislative boundaries. So the state Senate, state House, the state school board, etc. The county then has to draw the precincts that have to follow the state legislative boundaries and city boundaries. And then the school districts are basically formed by simply grouping together precincts until we get that magic population number that we're looking for. So if you look at the map of the Weber School District as a whole, it basically is a circle with Ogden City right in the middle of it all. And so from a geographical standpoint, we really don't have a lot of options on what to do with this district, because you just basically pick a point, a starting point, and then you just work either clockwise or counterclockwise until you hit that population, and there's your district. So in the discussions that I had with the administration, it was very important for them that the Ogden Valley be paired with North Ogden City. So that's where we started. So I grouped all of Ogden Valley together. Then I moved over into North Ogden, and I added as many North Ogden districts or precincts as I could until I hit that magic population total. And there is your District 6.
So those smaller boundaries, those are voting precincts?
Yes, those are the precincts. So think of those as building blocks. So that's where so each precinct has a population. So we're basically just kind of using it as building blocks.
And I think that's important to understand that through this process there'd be no drawing lines through picking streets. Those building blocks are the voting precincts. And so it's just a matter of this voting precinct's going to go here, or does it go here? Does that make sense? Yeah, the voting precincts really become the foundational building blocks to put all of this together, not only for a school board seat, but legislative, state senate, state school board, congressional. It's all built around those voting precincts.
So with District 6 created, which is the first one I created, and then if you go down to the bottom southeast corner, which is District, I get my names here, District 3. So with District 6 built, now we go down to the South Ogden, Uinta to Washington Terrace area. So because they have to be contiguous, Uinta and South Ogden have to go together. There's absolutely no other option because north is Ogden City, south is Davis County. So we really have nowhere to go with that other than where it is. But with South Ogden and Uinta together, it was a little bit short on population, so we did take the northern part of Washington Terrace, and that created your District 3. And then that left it with the rest of Washington Terrace and all of Riverdale, which had to go together because again they are contiguous.
Is that little sliver right there, is that considered contiguous right there?
It is, yes. Because you'll see we have that little, we got really wise to this, and there are some areas where we had to draw some really teeny little strips through there. Yeah. But that strip is also, that strip you're noticing is actually also part of the precinct that's to the right. It's a very large precinct.
It's a wonky looking.
It's a wonky looking precinct, yeah. That's an unincorporated part of the county down there. So with District...
Wonky, is that part of, substantially equal geographically?
Wonky is in parentheses here.
Okay.
I think that should be added, yes.
Can you zoom that in? Bruce wondered if you could actually see homes and things in this area.
That's pretty steep. Is the
I was
river?
gonna say, somebody's
That's
gonna be
just
living on
the-
the edge of a cliff,
The
right?
river.
Yeah.
This is the river and the
It's
railroad
the river.
tracks.
Yeah,
and then,
that's-
So we got some railroad traffic as well.
Lot of railroad.
The interstate.
We just have to account for every piece of territory.
Yep.
So it may not always make sense, but it has to be
Yeah,
accounted
yeah,
for. So
right.
in case somebody does actually live there, someone we don't know, and might have a tree house someplace.
That part of Washington Terrace
Yeah.
went out of 5 and
Yeah, through this process, you guys, if you wanna get up and, get a feel for your precinct, do it. This is the time to, this is the time to do it.
My bottom line question was, am I still in 6?
So
Everybody's
let's
You might wanna tell them.
so that I should have led with that.
There you go.
Northern part, where's the-
With this map, every board member
This-
remains in the district that
this
they
is the
currently
north part of
represent.
Washington Terrace. There's-
So that was my main
What
goal,
about the
so
boundary
everybody's safe.
With Washington from yours to mine.
What is that?
Doug, did you catch that?
What was that? What was that?
Daniel, just repeat that.
Every board member will remain in the district that they currently represent. So
Trent,
no
can you
one's
zoom
outside.
in, Doug? Will you show Trent where you're questioning and just have Trent zoom in and answer your
Yeah,
question?
we can zoom in, I just wanna know what that boundary, where they
What,
took northern.
what's that road?
What street?
Yeah, what road is
Is
that?
that 5,000?
Trying to see.
Yeah,
Right there,
between
right
the
there.
Pink and the red.
Yeah, between.
What's that school?
That's Bonneville.
Drill down.
So it
Well,
wouldn't
it had to be
be,
Bonneville
it wouldn't be
High School, right?
5,000.
That's
It
Bonneville
might
right
be-
there.
So
It might
it's
be
on the
48.
dividing line of Bonneville,
Yeah,
so
So
it
it's
goes right
like,
down.
it's
south.
like
47?
4,600.
4,600?
Yeah, that road about the, so
Is
that's
that as
40.
far as you
Everything
can
north
zoom in,
of that,
Trent?
okay.
So you've got Washington Terrace on
I don't think it has the street names on there actually.
Okay, that helps us right there
So
though.
that's from 48.
Yeah, no, that would
North
be,
side, cause you can see the parking
I
lot.
think that's,
There you go. Now go
yeah,
back
that's
here.
that's 48,
That's
Doug.
48.
Yeah, 4,800 South Lake
Lake
Way.
Way.
So that's the, right, okay.
4,800, yeah.
So everything north of that.
Yeah.
Huh. Okay.
And there were
If you see where-
there's two reasons why that street was used. Number one, that is actually a legislative district boundary.
Oh.
So there are two precincts above that. And if we went any further south, then we would have drawn Mr. Hurst out of his district. So you're welcome.
I'd love to have you in my district.
And I would love to see that flip a coin to see who continues on in that district too. So.
By law, do you have to live in your precinct? Because our federal legislator for District 1 for state of Utah lives in Salt Lake, he's not in the.
Locally, you have to reside in your district that you represent. Yes. So if I had put you in a different area, then you would have served out the remainder of your term, and then they would have had to appoint somebody after that.
against Bruce.
Yeah, or run against Bruce, exactly.
No, I just let it go.
So that's just kind of the basic of how we work this out. And District 5, if you can notice on that bigger map, did pick up more of Roy City, and that's simply because of population. We had no choice with that.
Just see me going to Roy, Doug.
Really interesting.
It is.
Yeah, so then Doug goes how far?
Clean to the tracks.
So that puts Roy Junior High, look at all those schools, Doug, that you pick up.
Yeah, Doug,
Municipal,
you have a
Roy
lot of
Junior High,
schools.
Lakeview.
Yeah, wow.
He has a ton of
Roy
schools.
High School.
Yeah, he goes down
Does
48
he pick
again.
up Roy High School also?
No, he's
Right,
on the
that's
south
right.
side of Roy. You're on the south, so Roy.
Roy.
That's Jan.
That's
just right down
that's
there.
4,400.
So it's again,
it's
48.
48.
So it's again 48 based off of, when you mentioned precinct, it's the same one we talked about.
He's got the older population.
What it-
is what he did.
Yeah, 4,800 south is a
So
legislative
Lakeview,
boundary again.
Junior Municipal, all goes
Is that where
down.
he lives?
Wow.
But look how yours goes, Jan.
No, which one's, where's Jan?
Jan's
Jan's the dark blue right there.
Okay.
I'm
Jan-
turquoise.
So Jan has Sanders.
Okay, so pull that, Trent, pull that so you can see further north.
There you go. Okay.
Wow, mine changed
Okay,
too.
Gainesville.
So,
Jeff, where's the new high school?
It's out there.
look, it's in the,
in the like the
Right there where it says H in the
Oh,
left
I
light.
got it. I got it. Okay.
And the new junior high is in.
The new I got it.
All the way down to the tracks.
Where's the new elementary?
It's right there.
school? I know, but I can't
It's
see which
close.
side it's on.
3,300.
It's in the
Falls.
light blue.
That's what I wanted to see.
yeah.
So Paul, you have that.
Oh, that's Paul.
That's Paul's the light blue.
Paul's the light blue.
Dark blue is Jan. So Jan takes quite a bit of Paul, and then I actually go out to West Haven Elementary and down to 55 and over through
You have a little sliver of Hooper.
a sliver of upper. So down through
Everything that looks like a hayfield or a swamp is.
Did you? So is Brick High with Doug?
No, it's
Jan.
Jan.
How much will the blue area change in 10 years? The next
Yeah.
census? Wow.
That's the only place it really can.
Both those blues, that darker blue will also change. There's a lot of, as far as population goes.
Open land.
Trent, why don't you pull up so we can see Dean's as it extends west and impacts currently Paul's. Because Dean, you'll extend further west.
It's Dean Green.
You're over Silver
You're over
Ridge.
Silver Ridge.
You're over Silver Ridge.
Yep.
Silver Silver.
No, not
Wow.
Well, Christie's with.
far west.
And far west.
Yep.
So down 2,700.
Yeah.
North side
On the north side, so Wildquist stays with Paul.
and east of, what's Silver Ridge on? What west? Oh wait, it's even further than that.
So Steve Peterson's house is in.
So there's a canal. Yeah, you're right, Bruce. Steve's in.
His house is on one side, business on the other.
Yep.
You're about 2 blocks apart.
Throw a rock and hit it.
I thought.
Well, that's good then. You get Green Acres though, there's where you're living, is right where that cursor's at. And you pick that piece up, which
That was already there,
that's where I live.
That's what I'm saying, but Daniel could have cut that down, and taken them other two, which would have put you out. And that was his request, or our request, is we wanted you guys left in when we had our preliminary.
Janice, did you lose some of North Ogden? Or did you pick
No,
up?
she picked up.
She picked up.
She picked up, there you go.
That's the current.
There you go.
Oh, look.
Can you
there's
zoom
the
out of
current.
that just a little
Yeah,
bit?
that's a great map.
That's a good image right there.
Yeah, that is a good map.
okay, so that's
The black, the black is the current.
Can you?
Oh, I see. I see. So Janice picked up.
John's place.
She
Janice
picked up
picked-
She did pick up a
Majestic
little
and
bit,
Orion.
right?
She picked up Majestic and
No, they're
Orion.
still in.
Just zoom out just a little bit.
Oh, they're all-
Janice
oh,
is
they're-
gonna
okay.
take a picture with her phone. Pull it back down just maybe a touch.
Right
Right there.
perfect, thank you.
But not schools.
Thanks.
And you,
it's just
Sure.
something like,
Yeah.
And then Dino, you pick up.
Trent, can you do the same with the bottom?
So do you want a picture of yours, Dean?
Sure.
Okay. Can we get Dean's?
move it over, Trent, so you see Dean's in the frame.
Dean's is centered now.
I have to zoom out, might have to zoom out.
And his is all of the blue.
Blue. Can you pull it over a little
Dean's
more?
is green. That's Paul's in the blue.
Oh, that's
This is
Paul.
the green.
That's Dean. Dean's the green.
Dean is green?
Yeah.
Dean's green.
Okay.
But
Got it.
that's the current, and Paul, that's current.
Current,
So but he's gonna take some of Dean's.
so he come up to,
So Dean's got small L, right?
yeah, crest from both sides.
The only place that he grew was that unincorporated up on top, right?
The thing that's still interesting, or when we talked earlier about population, because the school age, number of school age children is different from section to section, because the older parts, the older voting field on school age children. Yeah.
Kingsville, all that, that's Jim. So the new high school is Johnston County.
Paul will have two high schools actually.
Call me, I'll go with you. I'll make sure you're all right.
I mean, Fremont and the new, so.
You gotta watch over there in Hertfordshire, that's where it's at.
Daniel, do you have the
What are you
numbers
talking
of the population?
I do. Do you have those on the map? The population.
If I go door to door, will I be safely going?
Anytime.
I do have those, if you want me to, would you like me to read those out?
Yeah, board, Daniel's got, just for your information, Daniel has the, population numbers.
And I can send this as an email if you want to.
Sure.
have that in writing.
Yeah.
So the target population that we were looking for was 24,986. So I just rounded that to 5,000, just to, 25,000 just for ease. So District 1 has 24,467, which is a 2% deviation. District 2 is 25,250, which is a 1% deviation off of that total.
Who's two?
That was 2. District 3 is 24,833, which is less than 1% deviation. District 4 is 24,912, which is less than 1%. District 5 is 24,809, which again is less than 1%. District 6 is 25,616, which is a 2.5% deviation. And District 7 is 25,015, which is less than 1% deviation. So population-wise, I think we did very well.
25,000.
25,000,
Yeah.
we did very well on that.
Five's probably not gonna change.
Remember the discussion when we had a couple of, I don't remember if it was last board, where Jeff kind of says that he's gonna kind of go like that. That's really about the only way you can make that happen, still keep you in your precincts, and still give the growth to 25,000. But I think that's very reasonable, Daniel. I think we've done a great job.
Yep.
So, I got another question, Daniel. So, the census occurs 2020, and this will be instituted on 2022, right?
January 1st, 2022 is when this takes
Is that
effect.
a typical, a 2-year lag, kind of typical to process all the data and stuff? So we're looking at 2032 the next time we
Yes.
see the change.
Right. And I could have taken District 4. I could have put that much lower population-wise because we know that's where the growth is going to occur. But then we would have been in violation of the substantial
those out
part of
We send all
But
those
who
out.
could predict the future?
No.
I'm sure he can.
Even though we're pretty confident, who knows?
Even though we know where it's going to happen. We can't, it's based on now, not 3 years from now, unfortunately, in those regards. So.
They were asking, can you send those out?
Oh, absolutely, yes.
Thank you so much.
Yes, Bruce and board, he will send the precincts out to you via email with this
Perfect. Thank
for
you.
your area.
Thank you.
say you guys are okay with that, but it got passed last Tuesday, so I guess you're okay with it.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. It doesn't-
I just wanted to soften that just a little bit.
If you don't like it, let me know, and 10 years from now I'll fix it.
I like that.
So I have my notes, I'll write it down right now.
I can't believe how calm you are during the speech in redistricting. Look, you just calm as
John, that went well, right?
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Daniel.
Very
Yeah,
welcome.
that's
Pleasure.
right.
Daniel, thank you
Thank you very much.
Did you have more?
That is it for me. Unless you have more for me, I'm done.
I think we're gonna move to Commissioner Ford. Thank you, Daniel.
Trent, can you just pull the map into, get the new high school?
So both new high, two high schools will
So
be in.
Paul is,
Paul.
both high schools.
Yep.
Yeah, Paul's got both.
Paul, where did you go?
Hey, so that's part of that. That was what we were waiting for,
You
Paul,
got Fremont.
as far as the committee on policy 66. I hope you're ready.
We've got Fremont.
So the junior high sits in my precinct.
The junior high is yours.
Yep.
And then
The elementary still sits in mine. You have the new elementary and the new
Paul
high school,
has-
but I have.
Paul has them both.
Both Fremont and the new high school.
And the new elementary. And Jan has the new junior high.
You've got like 7
And future junior high would be Paul as well.
Wow.
The future junior?
Yeah, remember the property that we just closed on?
Oh, not this one, but maybe one further.
One now.
Yeah. But again, that one could actually come again before we look at redistricting. If you look at the timeline potentially, 10 years, if that growth continues. All right.
Well, I'm looking in my district, how much open land there is. More in Paul's.
I'll zoom in on each of your districts with this map right here and
Okay.
crop it out and send that in, and so you can see everything around it. You can see where the old boundary was and the new one.
Total, and then just send our district as well.
Yeah.
That'd be good, Trent. If you'd send everybody the total and then everybody their own.
Yeah.
Thank you, Trent.
You bet.
Weaver innovation in Two Rivers as well. Looks like he's on.
Do we have that on there?
Oh, yes.
Oh yeah, right there.
So, I mean, that's.
Gee.
Now, is that because
Technically-
those two are technically in Ogden City?
but-
Yeah. And the other one that we have that's in that same situation is Canyon View. So, you know, the boundaries along 12th Street, using Robert's technical term,
Wonky, wonky.
you know, because you're moving from Ogden City, Marion Slaterville, some Harrisville. It's different. In fact, I've been in situations where even those little entities are arguing among themselves what's in whose boundary. It's right along 12th Street. It's different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Which fence line is correct?
It is.
How about
so
I
can
have
I ask that question for
Yeah, I said-
clarification? So like
Well, let's
Canyon
not bring
View
that
or,
up. You know.
Two Rivers, which is in Ogden City, they would be within that voting precinct, so who is responsible for this? Who do they fall to? Which board member?
Well, it's not really the way a board works, though, Lane. That's not how a board works. A board represents the entire school district.
Okay,
So a board, just because Roy High School is in your boundary doesn't mean you as a board member are responsible for that school. That's just not the way the board operates.
But didn't we have an instance where that's when there was an issue and it had to do with Doug or in Doug's area and he and John met with the person? I mean, don't they appeal to whoever represents, even though?
Sure, you'll have
As
constituents.
voting.
You'll
As a
have
voter.
constituents, but there are no constituents
at Two Rivers High School. The constituents live
okay, the
somewhere
schools,
else.
the
The school is located there,
Okay.
but the constituents don't live there.
Got it.
Anywhere.
Same with Canyon View.
Same with Canyon. The constituents might live
In the entire district.
anywhere in the school district because it's a magnet school. Each of those are essentially magnet type programs. So there's no constituents that live
But
there.
a constituent aligned with that school had an issue, they would go to their school.
I would say that. So you think about Canyon View, for example, our special needs school. You have children attending from all over.
Right.
If there's someone from North Ogden that has a concern with their child at Canyon View,
Then who would they go, then they would go to the North Ogden representative?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, that'd be wise, even though that school
Is
might
not.
not be in the boundary, their child,
Got it.
yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so with that, thank you, Trent, for sending that out. And you'll get that overview as well as your new area. So you can start campaigning now, Jan. The next will be,
John, can I just say something about that though? Because it has been very easy to be very committed to the constituents that elected me. And now that has to push a little different way. As far as what schools you attend to and what schools you make stronger contact with. I don't know how to say it other than that. And it would change for Dean for sure. I could see the same situation for me.
you are correct you are correct as far as that goes. At the same time, I would cordially say we should visit all of them.
We do.
But there are constituents within there who support you based off of your voting district.
That's right.
And we need to. So hopefully those zoned in maps that Trent will send us will help us. It might be a little confusing if you look at the map we have now because you're trying to decide between roads. But Trent will get that to you, and then you can reply to his email if you need something else. And we'll help walk you through that. But we got a little time between now and our next, I think we're 2 years out. 3 years maybe? So I think we're good to go. Alrighty?
3 years out for what?
Next round of the next elections.
Mine's up in,
No, we have some in November.
In the
We have
fall.
3 that are up in 22.
mine is up in,
Are you 22? Who else is 22? Dino?
Am I up in 22?
No.
Should
I
be
think
4
it's
of you.
Janice.
I'm at 20.
I know I'm not. I'm 24. Doug's 24.
24.
I think it's just 3. I think it's just 3.
I know it's me.
I was
You're
at
24.
2020, so I'm
Yeah.
64.
Paul, John and I were, so the other 4 are up in 20.
Well, Bruce may have gone because of the death of Brent, but I don't remember that.
So he had to run again. He ran in 20.
So that's where you're at.
So
I went 4.
so
Okay.
one cycle it's 4. The next cycle it's 3. The last cycle was unique because of Brent's passing. We actually had 5 up. That's highly unusual. Normally it's 4, then 3, 4, then 3. 22 is
22 is Jan, myself, and who else? Dean.
And that puts us back in line because Brent didn't go with us.
Jan and Dean.
So,
Always. We sing well together.
well, here we go. All right, we'll get those out to you so you can start concentrating, make a good effort next year. So, with that, we are moving to number 6, proposed TIF, tax increment funding in the Western County. Dr. Stevens, if you would, please.
Thank you, President. Board, one of the important tasks that you take on is tax increment funding, especially as it relates to proposed redevelopment projects. And we've been through a number of these with various taxing entities, so you're very familiar with that. The board wisely, several years ago, developed a set of guiding principles that help shape some of these decisions. We also at that time set up a process, and that process is always followed with each request. Most recently, we've had a request from Weaver County, been working very closely with
Commissioner Gage Frower and his team. They have a unique proposal. And Commissioner, let me just turn the time to you. But I'll let the board know that we've been through, the process so far with Commissioner Frower and his team, Weaver County, and so let's just kind of process through that one a little bit.
Good. We'll try to be brief on this. First, let me say, appreciate the opportunity to meet with the board and the superintendent. I've worked with the board over the past number of years, and it's always been a pleasure to do so. Let me just say I understand that we're going to be losing our superintendent here over the next year, and that's unfortunate. I've worked with 3 or 4 different superintendents. I'll tell you, Superintendent Stevens has been a great asset to this county. He always puts the students and our public first, and it's been a real pleasure. I hate to see you go, Superintendent.
Thank you, Gage.
Anyway, I'm sure the board will make a good decision, and Superintendent can go on and have some other things in his life. He has a long span ahead of him. But let me introduce my team, if I could. From Weber County, we have Chris Roybal with us, who heads our Northern Utah Economic Development District. That's a combination regional district we put together with Davis and Weber County about 1.5 years ago. Stephanie Russell is our Economic Development Director at Weber County, and Rob Sant is working for us on this particular project. So let me just be brief in terms of what our request is. We have an opportunity in western Weber County. We have a potential what we call our industrial mega site out there, which is primarily, again, commercial industrial development. We have an opportunity. It's a 6,000 acre site. Right now we have a proposal that's very close to consummating with an 8th-generation Japanese food company that's looking at purchasing approximately 186 acres. This is on West 12th Street, almost to Little Mountain. So it's almost to the edge of the Weber County border. What they're proposing is approximately a $350 million improvement to bring in a manufacturing plant to that site, employing about 550 people. What we've agreed to as a Weber County Commission in the way of tax increment financing, because obviously this is a very expensive project. We're looking at major investment for infrastructure. We've already committed somewhere between $10 to $15 million of Weber County ARPA funds. I'm working with the legislature right now on some additional ARPA funds. It's going to take somewhere probably between $30 to $40 million to get the infrastructure we need in terms of road, water and sewer, electrical and gas to make this site go. What this does, it really changes the face of economic development for not only Weber County, but the state of Utah. The governor's office has been here. They fully support this. Go Ed, Go Utah fully supports this. We're really in the center of economic development for Utah for 2 reasons. Number one, we have the land, we have the dirt, and it's close to a workforce. There's other areas across the state that have available land, but because of Weber County's proximity to our workforce, the Applied Technology College, Weber State University, and our school districts, we have a great opportunity to provide the employees that they need. Again, 550 people for this particular company. What we're asking you to do is to evaluate your TIF policy. We understand the policy is in place. Weber County has committed to 70% over 20 years. We met this week with the fire district. We also have an affirmative vote. They voted, I believe it was Tuesday night, to go with Weber County on the 70% 20 years. We would ask you to evaluate your policy, get as close to that 70%. We need to have as much money in that TIF because this is not an inexpensive project to put forth. Again, this is 180 acres. The county commission approved the project area yesterday in our commission meeting. I guess it was Tuesday at our commission meeting. So the project area, which is the first step in the TIF project, has been approved. we're anticipating, and Chris can talk a little bit about what we anticipate for the future. This is just the starting point for this 6,000 acre development. We're not asking you to commit to any future development, even though we have 2 or 3 other companies that have expressed a good interest. We feel that this is the starting point, and once we ink this first company, we feel the rest will come, and the rest will come at a lower TIF contribution from Weber County. So I'm going to let Chris just take a second and talk about the mega site, then Rob will go over the numbers. Again, I think the important part to understand is the current site is in Greenbelt. 6,000 acres is all in Greenbelt. He'll explain the number of dollars that you have coming to you, which is probably less than most of you have in your right-hand pocket right now. So I think it's important to look at where we are now versus where we could be.
And Gage, you're only looking at this one project to adjust that TIF on this one project.
Yeah, that's the important part. All we're asking for is this project. Other projects, it's our intent from a county standpoint to maybe decrease that. We've also made the same promise to the fire district that once we get this started, we think it's just will exponentially increase from here.
Okay.
So it's just this 186.
That's a great point, Bruce, and want the board to understand and engage it. It's actually not a policy; it's just some guidelines, and their ask is a little higher than our guidance of 50%, and our discussion has been somewhere in that neighborhood of 65 to 70%. But knowing that with the initial project, there's probably some greater need with infrastructure that will be put in place for the future developments that come in, and therefore, the ask on those TIF projects would be back down to more our 50%. Yeah. So, one of the concerns I think as a board that you would have is sort of that precedent setting. Well, why did you go a little higher here? Well, there's a reason. Number one, as Gates said, this is in Greenbelt. Chris will tell you, we're getting no money right now. The money that's coming in from those 6,000 acres is nothing. And this has the potential of tremendous growth for the county, for employment. One of the other things, Commissioner, is we talk about those policies, and if you think back of our guidelines, the number one priority is manufacturing, and that's what this is.
Right.
And so it's right on, and even though it might make some of you a little uncomfortable getting, above that 50%, there's rationale to that, and not precedent setting to that.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. It's a matter. This is what I call anytime you do a subdivision, the first lot you sell is always your hardest, and then the other people look at it like somebody's jumped in. So once we can kind of break that initial interest in that site out there, we think it's going to just increase again overnight. And the benefits, if we can capture this first site, again from a dollar standpoint, it's manufacturing jobs, it's jobs for our kids. It's very little impact right now on housing. You don't have to worry. I mean, we will have additional people come in, but the intent, I think, is to hire mostly internally. Obviously, this is a Japanese 8th-generation company. They're going to depend on our workforce here, our kids, the ones you're producing out of school.
In fact, we even had some conversations about some opportunities for work-based learning. Some of our CTE classes, students being able to have some outstanding work-based learning.
Absolutely. We've talked to them about that with the company. They're fully on board with that. And with the ATCs and Weber State, we think it's a great fit for Weber County.
They committed, or is we still one of the finalists?
Well, this started off with, they looked at 80 sites across not the United States, but internationally. When we first started meeting with them, they cut it down to 2 between us and Boise. We feel, being a real estate guy, I kind of understand what the dynamics are. We feel based on the discussions, we're in the driver's seat right now, but they haven't, to be absolutely
clear on this, they haven't committed to us 100%. They're going to depend on us. This is one of the final components we need. They're waiting from a letter from Weber County to say, look, here's the tax increment, here's the dollar amount you could expect. We just learned yesterday they have a $50 million bill that's coming forth just to do the soil infrastructure out there. So it's not a cheap project. And but we feel I'm very optimistic, but this is probably one of the last items that we need to do before they'll give us that final commitment. That's why we're here today.
Time frame on it.
On development.
What's the time frame for development?
Well,
Chris,
you want to?
Chris, do you want to?
Well, yeah, they're gonna, we hope they'll make a final decision here in the next 30 days or so. Then they would hopefully start construction in the next 12 months, depending on how far along we are with the rest of the infrastructure with water, sewer, utility upgrades, and so forth. So it's moving fairly quickly. I would just add briefly that, as Commissioner Froer mentioned, this is really Northern Utah's opportunity to create the next job creation area for industrial development. We are literally out of industrial product. We have a 1.8% vacancy rate. There's about 47 million square feet in total in Northern Utah. And so BDO can do maybe another 1 million square feet and then they're out of land. So we don't have any other place to put industrial companies that want to expand in our region. And as the Commissioner mentioned, we've been traditionally very strong on the industrial side. We like the manufacturing jobs. They're higher wage jobs. These jobs will be, most of them will be close to and above the county average wage. So they're good, solid, $40,000 to $60,000 manufacturing jobs. So, as the Commissioner mentioned, a lot of these upgrades will benefit the rest of the park as it starts to get built out. We're entertaining other companies coming, and this is our opportunity, really. And it's as you drive out there, you've all been out there. We've got a lot of land, but it takes a lot infrastructure-wise to get us to where we really have a shovel-ready park that we can start to
Chris,
build on.
I have a question. I know that we've worked on a solar, and that in the end didn't materialize. Is any of this in that same area as the solar project that was proposed 2 years ago?
The solar farm was moved to the east.
Okay.
About 1.5 miles east.
This is further west.
This is all the way west.
Okay.
If you know where GSL, so just to give you a perspective, GSL, Western Zirconium are out on that west side of 9300 West. This is all basically to the east of WZ and GSL. That's what. Any other questions I can answer? I'm going to turn some time over to Rob here. He can give you the numbers. I think they're pretty easy to explain.
So, and then also, Dean, to your question, we anticipate following your policy when it comes to triggering the project area. So it'll be within 2 years of approval of if you approve the open agreement. So right now, the school district is receiving a whopping $9 a year on the 180 acres. That's the property tax you're getting. We anticipate when the project area would sunset in year 20, that number would jump up to $1.6 million a year. And then during the life of the 20 years, your 30% would be around $500,000.
So year one?
Year one, you're getting, it's about, 350,000. So you're going from 9 to 350. And that's just on that 180 acres. And then the way I describe it is I helped Eagle Mountain create the Facebook data center deal. And that one was also outside of Alpine School District's policy. And then because Facebook was there, 2 years later, Google came and talked to Eagle Mountain, and their deal was more in line with Alpine School Districts. And the end goal for this area would be that it sells itself, and we don't have to come to the school district anymore and ask for money, right? It's the BDO, so people just want to be there.
So let's say that homes were built there, which it's way west. the chances of homes getting there anytime soon are not good.
Mhm.
But even if homes were built there, the residential property tax would not be that big
Correct.
as our first year.
Correct, yeah,
Possible,
yeah. So, and we anticipate coming for future ones as it develops. So that's what's also beneficial about this is it's more site specific, so you know what you're getting, right? So if there is a residential component and we needed tax increment, we would come and we'd work that out. But we want to do it by more of a project by project basis instead of just hey, here's a 6,000 acre project. Please give me 70%.
That's wiser for this board to do that project by project, not the whole thing. That's why it's important to understand on this first ask, it's probably a little outside of what normally we do is following our policies.
Guidelines.
Yeah, our guidelines, thank you. Can I just ask you a kind of a blunt question? We had some discussion about 70%. It's a little tough for, how impactful would it be to your project if we went to 65%? How impactful to the project?
Rob's got that number.
So the big reason why we're asking for that 70 is the number that the company's kind of identified is $30 million. And so we're kind of trying to wiggle with it to get to that number. And so it would probably take it from 30 million to about 26 or 27 million. So it's a significant impact.
Okay. So board, I think what they're kind of looking at, because it's not a completed agreement right now, they're looking basically at a not a vote, not voting in a study session, but just an assurance that the board is comfortable with a memorandum of understanding that we're supportive of this concept, of this project, knowing that once it comes, there'd be a specific interlocal agreement drafted that would get to the specifics, but it would probably be that 70%, 20 years, and knowing that future projects that come in, this is 186 acres of 6,000 acres, that those future projects, you could then bring it back down to your guidelines to fit that. And I think in that way, it makes it a lot easier to communicate with another request that might come in from another entity. That this is not a precedent-setting move. This was a very unique request.
Well, I would add to that too, Dr. Stevens, that we like to evaluate them that way because we want to look at the capital investment, what the average wage is for jobs, what industry they're in. The county does that as well. So the county's not fixated on a particular number either. So they may do anywhere, say from 0 to 50 to 70, depending on all of those factors. So in this case, we've got high wages, high investment, manufacturing, kickoff to the industrial park. So all of those things sort of check the boxes, at least from the county's perspective, to say, we'll push this up to 70 for this one, but it's likely that future ones will be some gradation below that.
Could I also, while we were mentioning this, there's rail out there, which is big into this, and there's access to the freeway, which is quickly for them as well. And that's another major issue. So if we're trying to build some confidence and feelings of that we're doing the right thing, I just wanted to make sure that we've seen them on there before I kind of look and have you guys go.
May I just ask the board if there's anybody who would have discomfort if I was to ask Heidi, our legal counsel, to work with county officials in drafting an MOU, not an interlocal agreement, because we don't have there's not a commit yet, but at least an MOU that they'd be able to share with the company that's showing interest. Would there be anybody who has discomfort with me having Heidi work with county? Okay.
So we can get this pushed.
So,
So how the fire district did it is they adopted a resolution.
Right.
The MOU
Instead of
signed,
an MOU,
and it was an intent to negotiate.
Yeah.
So it wasn't committing to anything, but an MOU would
Whatever
be
she's,
good.
whatever.
Either way,
Yeah.
but-
Yeah.
so
And we
who
just wanna
drafted
form-
the resolution?
So we drafted it, and then we gave it to the Weber Fire
Okay.
District's attorney for review. So we
Why
have that
why
ready
don't
to
you
go.
do that? Why don't you have your attorney draft a resolution? We'll run it through our legal counsel. It's not a commitment, just other than a commitment to negotiate.
But if the board would feel more comfortable with an MOU, I think we'd be fine.
I think we're fine
We're
with
just
the
trying to
resolution.
formalize saying, it looks like this will be your number. So hopefully with that, they'll be confident in their selection process. And then in that MOU, or in the event, we anticipate probably coming back in February with an interlocal agreement, we'll have language in there that says that this is specific to, so they're called Project Imagine, to their selection of the Weber County site. In the event they don't, then the agreement will be null and void, right? Because we know it's outside of your guidelines, so we want it to be just specific to this project, this user.
Yeah, no future, if this company doesn't come, then we're starting from scratch.
Yeah.
So,
Do you want to have the resolution sent to me, and then I'll give it to?
you wanna get that resolution to him?
Yeah.
Get
And I'll
that
give
done.
it to our
Perfect.
legal counsel.
Yeah.
Board, you're comfortable with that?
I think this is the way to
Solid
go,
note.
and this is an exciting thing.
Yeah, and again, let me just say, we really appreciate your time. We understand this is outside your guidelines. Obviously, the target that we're trying to hit is that 30 million. Every time we talk to them, it's, hey, our cost just went up 10 or 15 million. I can't say whether that $4 million differential would force them to go somewhere else, but just so you know, that's our target that they pretty much told us that they would like to, need to have.
Now,
Gage, can I ask one question?
go ahead.
So that 5% from 65 to 70 would put you at 30 million.
Well, it would be it's a $4 million differential,
Okay.
and so
4 million.
Yeah, 4 million. So what that says is if we're going to try to fulfill our, I wouldn't say commitment, but our target for 30 million, we've got to come up with 4 million somewhere else. Is what we'd have to do.
And this is also, there's no sales tax on this project, right? It's just property tax.
Yeah.
And the county doesn't charge a franchise tax.
Yeah.
So property tax is really the only source of revenue coming from this site.
One other question, it seemed like from our initial discussion that there had been maybe discussion around placing some caps on different components of the infrastructure.
Yeah.
So once those caps are put in place, should those caps be met prior to the 20 years, it's completed.
A great
right?
example of that, is the Station Park.
Station Park, yeah.
They hit their cap about year 14 of a 25-year project, and it sunsetted. So
on this one, you'll put some caps on those.
it'll be I believe 33, 30, whatever our budget shows to get that 30 million. So I think it's about 34 million will be the overall cap.
There's another.
Yeah, we missed that. We should have had that at first.
There's another guardrail
Because
for the board on that.
Because
That
it
cap
might
will
go
actually.
down to our typical.
Yes.
Yeah, correct.
Much quicker if the anticipation, because this is again the anchor point, that if it generates where they don't have to sell and it's coming, it will drop quickly if we have that cap on there. And that's where I meant to go when we were talking about potentially dropping a little bit. Is we still have the constituents that might ask, we have justification to support that on where it comes down so quickly or has a cap on it to come down when it hits that.
And right now they're anticipating 3 phases of construction and about a 10-year gap between phase 1 and phase 3. So if the market continues the way it's going, chances are that's going to be a lot quicker than 10 years, and that will really increase the.
Yeah, that was all.
Yeah, the cap's really critical to us because I anticipate that that's not going to go, based upon the growth we see in the history of this company, it should be quicker. Again, I can't promise you, but that's our indication.
Is there railroad access
Yes.
to that area?
There is, yes. It's the main UP line that goes out across the causeway. There's also the spur that runs out to basically being used by GSL.
Yeah, the property they're looking at is actually adjacent to the UP line and 12th Street. So it straddles them, and they would create a spur directly off of the UP line right into their facility.
Are we good, board?
Any other thing I can answer?
Maybe this is off the subject, but you talk, improvements, including sewer. Is this downstream from Central Weaver Sewer District?
They've been talked to.
Well, we actually had a meeting with Central Weber yesterday. You bring it up. So right now we're working with Central Weber on potential expansion. There would be a lift station. Right now we have a lift station located at 8300 West, but Central Weber would tie into that. But right now our initial indications will start off with some type of self-contained system, but basically a pond system to handle this and possibly one or two other companies. And then Central Weber, we need to run that sewer line so we can handle future residential. You know, you've got development out there for schools. Central Weber, that's about a $20 million project in itself.
Yeah.
But
that's all western part heading towards the lake.
Right.
Down from
Well,
the current Central
GSO's
Weber
low, we can probably help that.
yeah. So Central Weber will expand. Weber Basin's fully on board. If this goes through over the next 2 or 3 years, we have a 24-inch line running to 7,500 right now. They'll 16 after that. They'll come in and replace the 16 with 24. So we have all the basically providers on board with making sure this works. We also we've moved what we call the West Weber Legacy Project. As you know, that they're now doing the Davis County portion. Very critical that we run that Davis West Weber Legacy. We've got a commitment to move this to the high priority list for UDOT. So we're working on that just because there'll be a lot of truck traffic. We want to take as much traffic off of 12th Street as we can. So there's a lot of moving parts to this, but really what I see, this is the future of Weber County.
Great.
And
I work with school districts all over the state of Utah as my job, and you guys are great to work with. I'm not just saying that as a municipal elementary, Roy Junior and Roy High alum.
That's exactly right.
You guys are great to work with, and just thank you.
Thanks again for your time. Whatever you can do, know that we appreciate your support. You're great community partners. Our past relations have been nothing but success. So, have a happy holidays, everybody.
Thanks,
Commissioner.
Did you introduce your new person here?
Oh yeah,
Stephanie
You
Russell.
were sleeping.
Okay, sorry, Stephanie.
Yeah.
Stephanie's great.
Yeah.
We better understand.
And if anybody has any
just
pointed questions, anything that, hey, you think we didn't cover, you need answered, Stephanie is great. We actually brought her in from Georgia. We enticed her in to come in. She ran a lot of that same type of programs in Atlanta. We're very fortunate to have her. She knows everything about what we just talked about and on top of it.
thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Best of luck. Hopefully you get some good news really quick.
Thank you. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Did we commit to 7?
That's good. I do too, don't you?
That's a boom for the county.
It's big for the northern, it's just, I mean,
Still contending each with the airport.
you're gonna have to work on that as council.
I've tried.
We've only crashed like 7 since I was the fire chief. In our city. Oh, look at
It's
that.
the man.
Richard, welcome. We're just in the middle of a break, so
Yeah, let's take just a
you
short.
wanna take a pit stop break so we can go load up on that?
Yes, thanks, John.
Sure, 10 minutes.
All this stuff out west is downstream.
Oh, 10 o'clock.
Central
We'll
Weaver
start
Sewer
soon.
Lift station, that's all pump station.
Yeah, it's pump station.
They're not cheap.
No, that's gonna be a probably 36 inches.
If it was China, they just pump it raw sewage into the
They
lake.
go in this direction. Yeah, they just pump it in the ocean.
Pump the ocean or the lake, whatever it takes. They don't have a real powerful EPA in China.
I know.
Ocean or EPA?
There's no ocean.
And then those capitalistic nightmares.
Whatever ingenuity you can come up with is good in China. It's ladder on top of the forklift, on top of something else.
Qualities chosen by teachers and employees. So qualities chosen by
Oh, that's funny. That's funny.
That's what I like about you. Well, welcome back. There's some treats over there, and that's what we do when we eat at these all the time, kind of like USBA. Speaking of that, look who's with us. It's an honor and a pleasure, sir, to have Richard Stowe with us, the Director of the Utah School Board Association, to help walk us through some process of selecting a new superintendent. So I'm just going to turn the time over to you, Richard. Please. Is your mic on?
Okay, and I think that microphone is on, I believe.
It is, yep.
Well, good morning, everybody, and thank you for the opportunity to come and be with you this morning. I would have to say this is probably the ideal setting and ideal situation, as far as I'm concerned, for starting the process of looking for a new superintendent. And I say that because it's nice to have all of you here as board members so that everyone hears the same information and that you can hear it directly from me. So I appreciate being on your agenda this morning and be able to share with you kind of what we can do as USBA. So first of all, let me just mention there's an agenda here that I think all of you have in front of you. But I think maybe the most important thing is for you to think of USBA as just an addition to your staff. We're here just to help and assist you as much or as little as you would like us to. So as we go along, I can suggest a number of ideas or some thoughts that I'll pass along to you, and those are just that. Is just things for you to consider, and then you folks can make a decision as to who's going to do what piece of this. And obviously there are a lot of pieces of putting this puzzle together for selecting a new superintendent. And so today this is the fun part, is getting together and just talking about it. Then it gets a little bit tougher as we go along. And it will eventually get very challenging when you get down to that final point that Janice has to make a motion that I move that we appoint Dean Oborn as the new superintendent.
Second.
All in favor? Hey, this is all done now. Okay.
We didn't even make it to 11.
See how easy and fun that is? We're all done now. But yeah, it'll get to be a little challenging when you get down to that point. And I look at it as my job is to make it just as challenging as I can for you, so that we can bring you the very best candidates that we can. Because we're really looking for a rock star here, because you've had one. And so it's today can be a little bit more challenging to find a rock star today than what it was when you hired Superintendent Stevens. And I say that because you don't have to look around very far or very long, and you can see the challenges for a superintendent today are greater than what they were even yesterday. And so there's not a lot of people who are really lined up to be a superintendent anymore. There's a lot of them who, say, hey, there's other positions, that I can be in education, I can contribute, I want to be a part of it, I want to inspire kids. But to be a superintendent, is really living in a fishbowl just 24/7. And so there's not a lot who want to do that. Now, thank heavens, there are still a number of people who that is the dream of their life. That is what they set out to be. That was their career goal, is to be a superintendent. And so we still have a number of people who are interested in being a superintendent, and they are great. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that. But I think the thing that I want to do, and this is really down to number 2 item there, and that is that, you know, sometimes we, in the past, we would think of, you know, superintendent candidates that, man, there was a lot of people lined up to be a superintendent, and there, you know, in the past, we've had a lot of people lined up to be a superintendent. But again, today, that has changed. And so the numbers, and I want to kind of bring you to a point where you realize what those numbers might look like for the number of candidates that we would have. And so I'm going to just kind of back up now and go right up to the top, and then we'll drop down to that one. But I think the thing for you as a board that you have to realize is that this will probably be the most important decision that you will make as a board. And so for you to be able to work together and be able to get in and enjoy the work that you're doing as a board is critical for us in this whole process. That you, and you'll find that as you go along, that all of you, wherever you're at and however long you've been on the board, I think you'll find that you will begin to really bond together because of the importance of this decision that you're going to make. Now, you've had up to this point a lot of important decisions, and there'll be a lot more to be made in the school district of this size. But for right now, in my opinion, this will be the most important decision, because that decision will affect all of the employees in this district. It'll affect all of the students. It will affect all of the patrons. It's going to affect everyone in this district. That decision that the 7 of you make. So it's really important that you do bond together, that you stick together, and that all of you, the decisions that are made, that they're made as a board, not any individual making those decisions. And that will be extremely helpful in being able to make that right decision when you get to that point. So anyhow, so let's talk about the number of candidates. I think the first thing, hopefully, is that we will have a lot of candidates from inside your district here, of people who will apply. And as I looked at your board out there of your administrators, you have a number of them in your district, and I'm sure there's no doubt there's a number of them who could do the job as a superintendent, who would be qualified, who've had the training and could step up to do that. So hopefully we will, in a school district of this size, you know, I would suspect that there would probably be, you know, at least a half a dozen or more that would be interested in applying for the position. And so we certainly want to make sure that they know that they're valued, and that's where a lot of the great candidates will come from, is from within your school district. And so a number of years ago, well, not a number of years ago, it's just a few years ago, but I thought it'd be kind of interesting if I looked at all of the superintendents across the state and said, where did they come from? Did they come from, you know, within the school district, or did they come outside of the school district? And so it was kind of interesting to me to find out that it was split right down the middle. So half of them have come from outside the district, and the other half inside the district. Now we have a number of districts, and it's not any secret, but we have Alpine School District, our largest district in the state. They have historically always hired somebody within the district. A few years ago, they hired somebody outside of the district, and that did not turn out maybe as ideal. Superintendent did a great job, but it probably wasn't as ideal as what they have had in the past with them. And since that time, then they've always stayed within the district. Yes, please.
Can I ask, when you said outside the district, far outside the district, like out of state, or?
You know, in that particular case, so thank you for the question there. In that case, they were from I just about said where they were, but they were out of state. Is where that candidate come from. And so since then, it's always, they've stayed within the district. Jordan School District typically has always hired somebody within the district. In fact, they had always done that. And then a few years ago, then the board hired Patsy Johnson, who was from Las Vegas, from Clark County School District. And Patsy come in, done a great job for them. And but then, you know, after that, then that they've stayed within the district is where they're at, back to that kind of tradition of what they've had there.
Yeah, they stayed inside, but they made it a Bonneville alumni.
That's what it was.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So they did kind of reach into Weaver, but he didn't quite.
Oh, well, and you know, and so there's a lot of great stories about all of those of where they come from. And as you know, Davis hired one of your own here.
Yes, they did.
Maybe they'll want to come back. You know, who knows? Well, anyhow, I guess my point is that we have school districts like Alpine and Jordan, and you know, one of the board members made a comment to me, which I thought was kind of interesting in Alpine. They just said, you know, it would take somebody with a lot of extra skills and ability to be able to come in and run Alpine School District. You know, to be able to outshine maybe somebody that's already within the system there. Because, you know, they feel like, you know, that they have a great tradition and lots of things there in that school district. And I think that's pretty fair assessment of that. So let me take you to Granite School District. And I'm just going to review a couple of them because I think there's some great lessons that we've learned there. In Granite School District, I think that most of you know, they've kind of had the thing of staying inside some, not a lot. And then, of course, this last time when I did the search there in Granite School District, we had a lot of excellent internal candidates, so people that are already employed in the school district, a lot of excellent candidates. And then they hired Rich Nye, I think that most of you know. And so Rich come in as somebody from outside of the school district there. So
Bonneville alum.
Yeah.
It's another Bonneville alum.
well, then that's what needs to be a qualification then.
If you're counting.
Well, there have been some good ones, there's no doubt about that. Well, I think hopefully you kind of get an idea of where school districts have been. Now, I would say I'm going to kind of narrow that down just a little bit, because I think that of the school districts in Utah, we have a great track record of tenure for superintendents. The national average is, I'm not sure what that number is right now, but we, as of like today, but we are almost triple the national average for tenure of superintendents. And I look at that and I wonder, what the reason is, and the reason is pretty clear and simple. And that is that boards of education, like you, have spent the time, like you're doing today, to be able to go through a process. So like your survey, all of those kinds of things, I think are key to you in being able to find a successful superintendent and a match for your district, of finding that right person. And our districts in Utah, I think, and boards have spent the time going through and have taken the work seriously, to where you've done the things that you need to do to be able to find that right fit of a person for your district. And so, you know, again, I just appreciate you coming here this morning and to begin that process so that all of you can realize, you know, we can find a great superintendent for you, whether it's somebody inside your district or whether it's somebody outside your district. And if we do all of the right things, and I'm not suggesting that I have all of those right things. I can suggest a bunch of things for you, maybe kind of started just a little bit for you so that we begin to think, you know, in a large perspective, and also that we look and consider all of those people within your school district here to begin with. So I think if we can kind of keep that idea in mind, and that we're open, we will find some great candidates. So in that vein of thinking, it's really important for what you say and what you do. Because I can tell you, it's like right now, everybody's really quiet in this room because they listen to every word that's said. If there's some potential candidates in here right now. Because the things that you say can have a significant impact on those people. These candidates that are out there, whether they're in your district or they're outside of your district, if they sense, you know, that you have somebody in mind already, they're not going to apply. Because they're going to go, you know, that's too much work, there's too much at risk for me, and I'm not going to do that. And so we're going to shut out some candidates if there's something that we say and somebody perceives that as being, well, you know, it's already been decided, the board already knows who they want, or, you know, if people go, well, I'm not so sure about that board because it seems like that, you know, they don't function very well together, or they have a lot of disagreements. Somebody's going to go, well, I don't want to walk in that situation. You know, that's challenging enough, let alone to have, you know, some issues, you know, that the board's not functioning well together. And so all of those things are so important as to what we do and what we say. And so, you know, one of the things that I've had boards ask me, say, well, what do you say? Because I can tell you right now, you know, there has been people probably that have come to Doug and have said, hey, well, what do you think about me applying for superintendent? Do I have a chance at that? And all of the rest of you have probably been in that situation that you've had somebody that's approached you about that. And so if you say to them, well, sure, you know, yeah, you know, you'd have a great chance, or you'd do a great job, then they immediately grab hold of that idea and they go, well, sounds like I got the job, you know? So the board must have talked about it, and so, you know, that means, and so they begin to think that they have the job. So, you know, I think each of you need to kind of, in your own mind, think about how you'd respond to that. Here's one suggested idea that I have, and that's if somebody asks you about the position and, you know, should they apply, or they got a chance, or whatever, of being able to say, you know, this board is committed to finding the very best person that we can. And so we encourage everybody to apply. So that's what this board is committed to, hiring the very best person that we can, whether they're inside the district, outside the district. So we encourage everybody to apply. So anyhow, that's just a thought and a suggestion to pass along. And so I've kind of bounced around here and have covered several of these items here. Let's go down to number 3 real quickly if we can, a review of the Utah Code. It's very clear what the code says, and that is, it says that a board of education, so it's the board, it's not anybody else, shall appoint a superintendent. So it comes right down to the 7 of you making that final decision. It's clear who has the authority to do that, and that's you, of making that. So again, that's why it's the most important decision you will make, is because it's that one, and that one is yours to make. And the process as we go along, can look differently, and what I've talked about so far, and what I'll continue to talk about today, is that there's not a perfect little pattern for us to follow and say, well, you do this, this, and this. I have found that the perfect pattern is what you guys want. What you would like to see, and what you feel most comfortable with, and saying, that's the process that we want to follow. So as we go along here, maybe take a few notes and go, yeah, I like that idea, or I think maybe we need to do something different, because of the searches, all of them that I've done, and I've done a few of them, that every one of them is different and unique, and it's designed to fit the needs of that school district. And so I could go through and talk about a number of those, but I think that you'll be able to see what you feel good about, and what you would say, yeah, that's what we ought to do. I like that idea, and that's what I think we need to do. So that's the direction that we want to go, is for you to do the driving here and make some of those decisions. So, well, anyhow, that covers number 3, and then I just say on number 4 there, I think that's an important one there. The only cost that you'll incur is the cost for us in being able to print and mail a brochure, and if there's some websites that you want the announcement posted on, and there's a cost there, then you would just need to reimburse us for those costs there. So, all in all, we're really talking about some real small change here. It's going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of less than $2,000 for the cost typically of a search, and those would be searches that I've done just recently, and I'll share those brochures with you. And so maybe we'll do that right now. Before I do though, maybe let's stop and see if you guys have any questions that you have up to this point, or if you something that's not on the agenda here, or maybe that we've already covered. Any questions that you have, or thoughts that crosses your mind before we jump into these brochures? Yeah, Janice?
Okay, it's on. I just would like to take the opportunity to say how grateful we are to have you here, and to have USBA have this service for us. And I can't help but say, as you allude to Superintendent Stevens as a rock star, I have to allude and want to allude to you as a rock star at USBA. So grateful to have you here. You do amazing work with the people on the board of diverse backgrounds and interests and personalities, and you always pull USBA together, and I'm so grateful for your service.
Second that.
Oh, well, and thank you, and I can tell you, I appreciate you loaning Janice to us to serve on our board of directors. Has done a great job, really a great job of representing you, and I think in being just this really level-headed, common thinking, and I would say common that way, and calm that she brings to our board. And so anyhow, so thank you for doing that. Okay, well, let me jump in.
Richard?
Yes.
Can I interrupt a second?
Sure, please.
With all these rock stars, you should start a band, maybe. In the state, in the school districts, in the last few years, there's been some new superintendents that didn't work out real well. Not interested in the details why, but is there some lessons learned from those situations that would be good for us to know?
Yeah, I really think so. You know, it's been obviously very, very difficult in the last 2 years anyhow. But we have had COVID. And so, you know, I think that's made it difficult, of that relationship and working together and tough decisions. And I think I would have to say that some of the lessons maybe there that I would think that you as a board would need to think about. And this is just going to show my bias just a little bit, and I hope I don't offend anybody with this, but I have really found that when boards of education hire somebody within their district, they have a greater chance of success. Because you have people that you know, and I always say, you know, it's better to hire the people that you know than you don't know. And you can find out a lot about some of these people that are candidates, and we do lots of background checks and everything that way. But I have found, and I'd have to say in those districts where we've had, and it's not always the case, I mean, so these are not, you know, just, you know, put in concrete, but I think that for the most part, I would have to say that I think that the school districts have found that things have worked better when they have hired somebody that they know that's within the district, or, you know, have other reason that they would know somebody really well. And when I think, you know, boards have followed that, I think things have worked really well. So anyhow, that to me would just be one thing. There's, I think, some other things, and you know, and I don't want to overlook, and you know, because like I said, these are not, you know, guaranteed kinds of things, because it's different in every school district. But you know, Canyon School District hired Rick Robbins out of a small school district down in Juab, you know, but they knew Rick Robbins really well, and so, you know, that's worked well. You know, Granite hired you know, Rich Nye, and obviously they knew Rich really well. And Davis, you know, hired Reed Newey, and obviously they knew Reed really well. But I think, again, I think that when there's somebody that's within your district, just, you know, case in point right here, I think that, you know, we have maybe a little bit greater chance for success by hiring that kind of person. And they know what you want to do, you know, they know the language of your district. And when you say, you know, we need you to go over to this school, and, you know, we got to fix something here, well, they know where that school's at. So the learning curve, you know, is not as steep there.
Rich, within that same discussion, we've been very blessed. In the 20 years, we've only had 2 superintendents. Having said that, with going inside, and you just given us that broad spectrum across the state, and you mentioned national, what's the average for a superintendent? What can we expect? Maybe what should we understand and perception say? 5 years? Because, you know, 10 years for 24/7 job is remarkable, let alone 11 for this one.
Yeah.
What's the thought? What would, you know what I mean? We're expecting another 10 years or 11 years? What's realistic?
I think realistic, if you hire the right person, which, you know, runs what the the average tenure is in Utah. I think maybe Superintendent, you can help me. Probably 9, 10.
I think that's
Or-
probably a little high.
Okay, maybe 8.
Yeah, I probably 6, 7.
That's what I want to see.
Oh, we'll have to look. I think that.
Yeah, be interesting, but you know, I look at our list right now, Richard, and we're young.
Yes,
Body.
you are right now, aren't we?
Yeah.
Yeah, with superintendents.
Yeah, I mean, the vast majority would have fewer than 4 or 5 years.
I think that, John, I think in the nationwide there, I think it's, you know, you can probably Google that and see what the national average is. I would think it's probably around 3 or 4.
You know, I think I just got what I needed, to be honest with you, because as you go through that process, the anticipation would be, okay, this, you know, when doing the option was for Dean, well, Dean could do it for 4 years.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
And we should say that's probably very reasonable, even though we've had the cream of the crop, and we anticipate getting the cream of the crop again. But should that be something that's...
I think we'd have to be really careful on that, or the ageism.
Well, I don't mean age limit. I'm talking about tenure in the sense that says, listen, you know what I mean? You bring somebody inside that says, yeah, we know this for 4 years and 10 years, makes sense. You bring somebody outside that says we're here for 4 or 5 years, that's still doable. You know what I mean? Because we've had the exception. I really think we have.
Yeah, well, and that's one of those things as a board, you know, you have to have lots of time to talk about it and say, hey, you know, here's my concerns on this side, you know, here's what we see. But yeah, I think, you know, your question is really valid there of, you know, what do we see? What have, you know, maybe back to what have we learned there from that? And I would think, you know, that tenure is gonna begin to shrink just a little bit, you know, as time goes along here. But so go ahead there, Dean. Yes.
I'm going to try to stay out of as much of this conversation as I can, and that's appropriate. But I think the thing I suggest to the board is that what you're thinking about is the organization and maintaining some stability within the organization, because these kind of transitions can create some challenging dynamics within an organization, and so you don't want to go through them every 2 years. You know, so you're just thinking about it that way.
That's some journalists.
Angel singing.
Who is it? Who is it?
Out there?
Kids.
Bring them in. Bring them in.
Absolutely. Lori, do you need another coat?
No,
Are you freezing to death over here? I'm gonna give you another sweater.
No, I'm kidding. Oh, sorry. We just couldn't go to the hospital, so we're here. From everywhere, filling here. Oh, we didn't mean to interrupt. Hey, while people sing songs of good cheer, Christmas is here. I'm so silly. We were literally, they wouldn't let us go to the hospital. So I said, let's go here.
This is our Board of Education, and you'll be so amazed that in the last 5 minutes, Bonneville High School has come up now 3 times.
I hope for good reason.
All for good reason. So who's here? Missy, who's
This
here?
is Bonneville's Tapestry, and we were really thinking we might hit up the hospitals, and then maybe they'd let us in. They won't. So we thought, where else could we go before we head down to sing for our supper at the mall? We thought we'd come here. So we were just going to go around the hall, but we'd be happy to sing you a number. Do you have time?
Yes.
All right. And I do have to tell you, can I just tell you and open this little thing? Brock Mitchell, our principal, just got nominated for the Utah Music Educators Association Administrator of the Year. So UMEA, he'll go down to St. George with us. And we nominated because he's fabulous and he just got that award. So I just thought I'd let you know because it's fresh off the presses.
Very good.
Just saying. What should we sing?
Lullaby.
Lullaby. Do you, how about Mary Did You Know? Do you like Mary Did You Know? Yeah?
Yeah, we like that. Mary, did you know?
Okay, we don't need a piano or Mary Did You Know? Okay, Ethan, would you sing the solo? Yeah. Wait, this is Ethan. He's one of our basketball players. He'll sing the solo. And do you have a name? Let's do a name. Have fun. Thank you for letting us sing for you. We had some time to burn. We needed someone to sing for. By the way, these kids have sang about 26 performances so far this season. And we're just finishing it off. Well, not really. Monday we have one more elementary. And the elementaries have gotten really creative to let us come. They're doing like 2 assemblies at each elementary so that they're not so packed in there. So it's really kind of a cool thing. But it has doubled our time out of school, huh? That's okay. All A students right here.
Broken hearted, I can tell.
Broken hearted. Yeah, I'm sure they're really upset. Ready? Here we go. Mary, did you know that your baby boy would one day walk on water? Mary, did you know? Mary, did you know that your baby boy sing our songs and daughters? Did you know that your baby boy has come to make you, this child that you deliver, this child will soon deliver you.
Mary, did you know that your baby boy would give sight to a blind man? Mary, did you know that your baby boy would calm the storm with his hand? Did you know that your baby boy has walked where angels trod? The face of God. The blind will see, the deaf will hear, the dead will live again. Dead will live again. The lame will leap, the dumb will speak, the praises of the Lamb. Mary, did you know that your baby boy is Lord of all creation? Mary, did you know? Mary, did you know? Mary, did you know? Mary, did you know? Did you know that your baby boy was heaven's perfect, the sleeping child you're holding is the great I am. Mary, did you know?
Thank you for all you do for the schools in your school district. Really, you run a tight ship, and I say this all the time, it's the best district to be in. As a teacher, and I've been a teacher a while, it's the best district to be in. You couldn't pay me enough money to go anywhere else. I love Weaver School District. Thanks for all you do. Okay, do you mind if we just sing around the building for a bit?
We would love it,
All
and
right.
they will love it.
Oh,
You
yeah.
guys,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Stevens is a hiker through and through.
But this is gonna change when we get the new high school built, so this water.
Okay, because my retirement's coming up pretty quickly. No way. Really, the new high
rock stars.
Yeah.
That was a band.
That was good timing.
That was perfect timing.
That was so fast.
How about that, Richard?
That was awesome, wasn't it?
Bitsy lives in
And how great that is to see a teacher that's that enthused
Yes.
about what they do.
Yeah.
You know, and for those kids, I would guess those kids would sing and go anywhere that she wants them to go.
And creative. To go to the hospital and then come here and stay.
We like to share just several years ago. I was at Bonneville, and as I was walking down Mrs. Hall, I'm hearing that sound, and I've got to go in. I go in, and they sing, some songs. It's not Christmas time, but they sing some songs. It's just unbelievable. And I brought the class together and I said, you guys know how lucky you are to work with this incredible woman. And, they acknowledged it. And I said, now I'm going to ask you to do something. I want you guys to just go in the back of the room, kind of huddle up, and I want you to think of a song that you want to sing to Miss Kirby that just expresses how you feel about her. And they all rush back and they're like this rugby scrum, and within 30 seconds they all disperse to get their sheet music, and they come back and they've got Mishy surrounded and I'm with Mishy, and they begin to sing the song from Wicked, right? Say it again.
I'm changed for good.
Because of, yeah. Because I've known you, I am changed for the better. And Mishy's just sobbing, the kids are sobbing, but that's the kind of caliber she is with those kids, and you can see it. But that's a moment I'll never forget in Mishy's class with her.
Well, I think we were back to Dean's had a question.
Kind of hard to follow. That's one thing I really miss about being a principal is walking down the hall and hearing the choir sing and go in and listen or have them singing choirs, going out and just feeling the love they have for the school and for each other. It's something that I truly miss. It's just the neatest thing. Back on the subject that we were talking about, and that's superintendent. I've been around a long time. And because of that, I've experienced, I don't know, at least 5 or 6 different superintendents, and experienced good ones, okay ones, really good ones, and then superstars. And it makes a huge difference to the teachers. I had one opportunity, if you want to call it that. I was standing in front of my class, and the door opened, and I'll call him a hitman. And he walked in and said, "The superintendent wants to see your curriculum for the year now." And I had a couple of folders about this big. I had all of the things that I could do. So I just walked over and handed him the folders. He left. And it was just a terrible feeling teacher said he's another one of the good old boys. And that one really hurt. By that, they meant that he was chosen to be superintendent because he was assistant superintendent to the last superintendent who was just kind of handed down kind of thing. I told Jeff this just a few minutes ago, but when I got my master's degree, I had to write a paper. And as you all know, I taught biology. And in biology class, we had a lot of labs, a lot of things where the students could do it on their own, but they weren't all doing it all at the same time. And, I mean, it was individualized instruction, basically. And so I gathered a lot of information to write my paper, and there was a lot, not a lot, but information in literature about individualized instruction and whether it was good or bad. And after I got through reading all that stuff, my conclusion was a student that does well in a class and enjoys the class more is that student, the teacher makes all the difference. If the teacher is involved with the kids and helping them along the way to do the best job they can, that's when the kids really enjoy the class. And that takes me to Dr. Stevens and how, in my opinion, he has been an excited teacher to all of us in doing what he does so well. He has inspired all of us to like to do what we do. I can't tell you how many times I said, I didn't want to be on the Board of Education. But it's been one of the very best experiences of my life. And as I've seen the superintendents of the district and the ones that I liked and the ones I didn't like as a teacher or as a principal, or, I mean, I can tell you really good things. I mean, Jeff learned from one of the best. Mike Jacobson was a star. He came from outside our district, and we chose him, but our district at that time was in pretty rough financial shape. A lot had to be done, and that was Mike did really well. And Jeff learned from him. One of the things I'll never forget, when I was with Jeff one time, we were sitting on a bus somewhere, and he said, I'm thinking about applying for the superintendent's job. And I was on the board then. And we talked about a bunch of things, and then he said, is there anything you can tell me that might help? And just like Richard said, you know, you say something and they, whoever you're talking to, take it very seriously. So here we are, I don't know where we could have been by Walden's Pond back east somewhere. I said, you know, Jeff, I think you are really great. I mean, the job you have as assistant superintendent, you're not, you know, whatever the job was. Back then, it might have been curriculum director, but I said, I don't know if you have enough financial ability and experience to handle $150 million. And he said, I said, what about you? What do you think? And he said, I think I can do it. And then he takes what I told him and got serious about it to learn more and more. And now he's the best I've ever seen. He's teaching the class at Utah State. It's interesting. And so when I look at these things, it inspires trust and high levels of self-confidence and optimism and models high standards of integrity and personal performance. That's the kind of guy we're looking for. But a lot of that comes from inside. You know, you have to want to do it. You have to have the ability to do it. And I should have known. I mean, Jeff's dad was the financial Robert Peterson in the district. So he comes from a very high standard.
No, that wasn't mine. No, that Ned is not mine. You think of Ned?
Yes.
Ron. So mine wasn't Ned.
Okay. Cross that out. Anyway, I've taken too much time, but I just want you to know that the superintendent is key to everything. If the school district is going to work well, and the workers, like Missy, say, I wouldn't go anywhere else. I love my job. It starts at the top, and they have to feel that. Now, I don't know. I do know that we have some terrific people in our district. And I think we need to open it up and see who is interested. And I expect there'll be quite a few people that will be interested in this, in his position, because it's in great shape.
Mr. Stoll, can I ask a question? Can I ask, we've talked a little bit about historical knowledge or how, if they have it from within or if they have it. What kind of supports are out there for those who might be looking at applying but don't have this historical knowledge? So that's one way to flip it. And the other way would be, do our candidates who have inside knowledge also have the support for the innovation of other districts, or even national? Do they have the ability to learn from what's going on externally, typically?
Yeah. Well, and I think that, you know.
So it's kind of two questions.
Yeah, and so I think maybe if I can answer your question from pretty high level, I think it begins with this brochure.
Okay.
I think that's where it begins for us to be able to communicate not only externally but internally. Because I think if we can put the information in there, and you guys have just done so many really smart things, you know, of getting this survey put together, you know, that Dean referenced, that the one item, and the superintendent shared that with me. you know, by doing that, we can put that in this brochure, because there may be internal candidates, you know, that will maybe not thinking about it now and see that, and they go, wow, well, you know, maybe I'm the one who can do that, those kinds of things. Or it would be somebody outside looking at it and go, you know, yeah, I think I can do those kinds of things. And we have been able to see that, you know, whether it's in a small district like in Uinta with Rick Woodford, that come from Wyoming, just a rock star. You know, and it was because he looked at the brochure and kind of goes, well, yeah, that, you know, that thing kind of looks like me, and, you know, and I think I've got that ability. The board's, you know, spelled it out. So it's all starts right here. So that's kind of my big perspective on that. And then it's going to come right down to then you as a board being able to, as you go through the interview process, be able to determine then in your own minds, is this somebody that can do that? Is this somebody that's got that ability and could do the job? Are we okay with that? Is that?
Yeah, and maybe my question is almost for Dr. Stevens, but do you have, I mean, are you allowed, are you given the ability to develop those skills that maybe you see as a whole in yourself when you're a new incoming person? And do you have the ability to,
You know, Jan, I think,
whether from within or without?
yeah, when I look back, one of the things that was so fortunate for me was we had a lot of experience inside the school district at that time. For those who were serving on the board, I want you to think about, you know, the likes of Lex Puffer and Linda Carver as assistants, Dave Brooks in technology, Ann Miller in special education, Drew was working with facility. So we had a lot of experience at the district leadership level, and you know, quite frankly, I think one of the concerns the board had at that time was, you know, what happens when they go, and quite frankly, that was a concern of mine, because I leaned heavily on those individuals that had many years of experience, and that helped me, you know, be able to lean on them. Robert is a tremendous resource, and to Dean's question about finance, first, our district is in very good financial, we're in a very good financial position, better than we've ever been, and a lot of that is a tribute to Robert and his many years. You know, it goes back to stability. There's some you know, there's some benefit to outside innovation and some of those kind of things, but there's some benefit to stability as well. But you know, being to your concern about finance, you know, that's something that, yeah, you need to look at within the new superintendent, but to know that the new superintendent has Robert to lean on for that for a period of time will be a tremendous benefit, and then they have to learn that. Jan, I think some of those holes and gaps, Dean talked about somebody maybe has to have that inside. You really have to have the initiative, take the initiative, and I look for that quality in a superintendent, because no superintendent is going to come to this position, you know, with everything, you know, all developed. Anybody that you choose has to be able to assess where some of those blind spots are, and then be able to take the initiative to make that become a strength. You know, make that become a strength, and that's even a quality that you might look for. You know, what kind of self-initiative, what kind of self-awareness do an individual have about an area of deficiency, and what kind of an initiative
to become proactive enough, assertive enough to develop that into a strength.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Richard, I have a question. You alluded to the interview later on as we gather candidates. In your experience, I know by law the board appoints, but in your experience, has it been boards that just interview, or does the board include others on the interview team? And I'm not loving to be on the interview team. I got plenty to do, just saying. But I'm wondering, what's been your experience? What kind of resources does the board have at their school?
Well, and that's a really good question, Robert, and I think that gets us down to, number 10, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about the brochures, but let's talk about number 10. This is a process that I have recommended to boards, and I think that you guys have had some discussion around that already. But as far as having a stakeholder committee involved in the process, and so to me, that's one of those smart things, and one of the things that I think that we have found. I think, Paul, you kind of brought that question up, that I think that when boards have done that, I'm not going to say it's a guaranteed success, or that that it's going to be a perfect success, but I think it's one of those things that if you do, I think that you have a greater chance of success. And that would be, and it kind of looks like this, and again, it can be different in each district, but to me, the way that I can see this probably been an ideal one in a given district is that after we get the applications in, is then that you appoint, as a board, you appoint a stakeholder committee, and that would be made up of, I've typically said, hey, each board member nominates 3 people to serve on this committee, and then that you look at finding, make sure that that employees are represented adequately, and administrators, and it may be mayors or legislators. We've had a number of them on those committees, and then they meet together and review those applications, and then we provide that document. Maybe you've even seen that document, that they go through and evaluating the candidates, and then provide that data to the board. And to me, one of the critical things there is that you as a board don't look at the applications until after that stakeholder committee has reviewed them, so that you give them, the credibility and say, we want you to see them first. Well, I'll tell you, that establishes amazing credibility with them. We say, we want you to look at them first, review them, and then bring that data back to the board. And I think that's one thing that's helped ensure our great success has been that very process there. So,
Richard, we have that scheduled for possibly the second week of February, if that works. I believe we're still on. 4 was okay. 3 is okay too. You heard him. So we're still there, right? Board members, we're still doing that.
What's that?
We're still good to go get 3 or 4
people for the committee.
Yeah.
And they can be from the community, they can be from the district, they can, where's our resource?
All you need to do is make sure you haven't crossed over into somebody else that has one. I.e., I mentioned Troy Bowling. Well, he was on Jan's list, but Jan took him off. Or it may have been on Bruce's list because they know him.
And right? I don't know him, he's a community member.
He's
right.
He runs the Larry H. Miller dealership in Riverdale. He's the ex-president of our foundation, and he's from a Roy High grad. Oh. And his brothers dealt in the community, so he's very involved.
Community
so I got him. Then I have a community council person at Fremont High or Walquist Junior High. So then I fill it in. We put that list and give it to Richard or somebody, maybe potentially Lane.
Lane,
I think we would give it to Lane. He would send the invite out. They would come here. And as I invited mine, just as an example, you can do as you please, and help me if you would, Richard. I've simply said, I need some integrity and honesty that you don't let any of this out. Yeah. What you're going to be screaming and what you're going to be doing, we're going to lock you in a room. We will feed you, I hope. You might have a little snack. Robert's always hungry, so we'll feed you. Give us 3 hours on a day in the week.
We may end up longer than that.
And again, it's based off of numbers of applicants that come through.
Yeah, hey, John, and just like Richard said, it would be, it's just my suggestion, but I'm hinging off what Richard said, include a mix of the current teachers
And we have that.
all the community, but a mix. Don't give everyone outside.
I have a
Because
teacher,
then-
I have an intern teacher, or an intern principal at Weber High, all right? So,
because if you go all outside, then our
you gotta
employees
mix
may
them,
feel
you gotta
alone.
mix them, but they gotta be confident, they gotta be good thinkers would be my suggestion, good thinkers.
When is this list, when do you want this list?
We ought to get it out probably mid-January so that they can get it on their schedule.
Yeah.
They
Don't
need
you
to
think?
start
Yeah,
hearing.
and we'll make a formal invitation, on behalf of the board, but I like your thinking on it, John, in terms of makeup, that it's somebody that has some sense of ownership to the district, whether they're a parent, whether they're a teacher, whether they're a classified employee, they might be on the community council somewhere, they might be on our foundation board, they might have an elected position, you know, and I'd say 3 or 4 that, and we'll probably work with, and I don't know, Richard, we'll probably work with Heidi Alder to develop a non-disclosure agreement that they sign that says this is confidential. We trust that this isn't something that you're gonna, you know, and ask them to sign a non-disclosure agreement, because they're gonna be looking at, you know, when a person applies to be a superintendent, you're laying your whole life out there, and you ought to be respectful of that.
That's the key, respectful.
I asked John a question a week or 2 ago. We draw on a principal or a teacher or a classified employee. The district's okay with them leaving and coming up here for
We'll cover.
without having to take vacation.
We'll cover that. So when we get the list, we'll just maybe you can stay if it's a teacher, and then we'll get it covered. The principal we don't need to cover necessarily, but
In that regard, and I don't know if we want to bog down on this much, but I've already selected 3. If it's somebody out in the business world, very well known, great HR experience, those kinds of things. A retired Weber School District principal, and a person community council PTA. So I've got 3 tried to. So I don't know if we need to coordinate that so we don't go too heavy in one or the other. So I've got one kind of each: business, retired principal, and a community.
I'm okay
PTA
sharing that
person.
right now so we don't cross that, Richard, just because it's a critical part of credibility of what we're doing that I really agree with as that suggestion came out as we go through this process. But we need the respect on what they're going to be doing, and it's not something they ought to be intimidators, and we're talking to people who understand this, you know what I mean? I have a gentleman on my, so I have an intern at Weber High. Ryan Wade. So don't take Ryan Wade from Weber High. I have Troy Bullard, Ryan Wade, who's the other one? I know him so well.
It's the gray hair.
Brian Cottrell, no it's not, the thing in between. And
remember, this is all.
that's okay, because again, it's gonna be confidential, they are not gonna share what they've got, but they gotta respect the process of who is out there, so that if it happens to be Dean, if he comes up again, Paul, I'm gonna second it, then we'll go say, hey, you're in the running, you're looking really good, keep it up. That's what you don't want.
How do you want us to share that?
You want to share it with Lane, I would say.
Okay, thank you.
You know, and that would be good to do that. So very good question. And then the thing I think that you ought to do as a board then, you know, is however, it's not, you know, confidential or anything that way, but to facilitate that, if you would just let John then be able to go in and look at that list and go, gosh, you know what, we've got a couple of holes over here. So we've got, you know, bus driver, maybe we should add that's not there. And we need to add, you know, maybe another teacher or, you know, secondary or an elementary or
I
whoever
like
it
the
is.
elementary, secondary too, so there's a little bit of
Yeah, to get all that perspective. And so I think, I found that it works really good if you just let the board president then, and then obviously, I mean, he's gonna get back and let you know, but just let him kind of steer that just a little bit with those names, because he may, see all those and go, gosh, yeah, we need to add this person. And it's certainly not gonna hurt if that committee gets to be, instead of, 28, 4 from each of you, if it gets to be 30, that's okay.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we're just fine if it gets to be 32 even, because we can manage that. And so we have a lot of templates, if you'd like a template for sending out the invitation, superintendent, and then you guys can, change it the way, whatever you would like.
That'd be great if you could send me a template.
Yeah, I can send you a template for that.
What we'll do, I'll work with Lane and Richard to put together a template letter that could go out to formally invite them, but it will come from the Board of Education, not from me, not from Lane.
So as we approach individuals, it sounds like many have already done so. You ask them if they would kindly serve on a committee which will be researching the potential superintendent, and that it would be highly confidential. And would they commit to one day in January or February? Or?
It'll be in February. It'll probably be because what we anticipate in the timeline is the month of January is primarily the month that the brochure is out, right? And so applications will probably do, within the first week of February. So you want that whole month of January that the application is out, so that the recruiting process, the process to make sure that every potential qualified candidate who has an interest has an opportunity to hear about it, put something together. So if the applications are due, let's say around February 3rd or 4th, something like that, hopefully we'd be able to bring the Citizens Committee together within the next 5 to 7 days of that.
So mid-February.
Maybe even,
beginning.
8th, 10th, 12th, yeah.
Okay. Between the 13th and 17th, which is the second week, not on Valentine's.
And I think, Janice, in that invitation, they would be reviewing the applications of people who are interested in the position. And we've kind of put together, and I've shared with you, and you've given some feedback on that, a rubric that, they can use to guide their evaluation. There's a rubric that they use to guide that evaluation process. But the essence of their work is that they will be evaluating the applications for those candidates interested in being superintendent. So the idea would be by the 12th, 13th of February, the board will receive all of the applications as well as all of the evaluations of those applications. And I think that's just a rich amount of data, information for the board then to start looking at, to say, okay, who do we want to interview? Who are our finalists? And so, as a board, you'll want to schedule some time right about, I'd say, the 12th to 15th of February that you're going to go through all of that information. So, again, you can start to see now. My wife asked me earlier this month, why did you announce so early? And I said, because it is a tight timeline. To do this right, to make sure the process is thorough, inclusive, transparent, it's a tight timeline to try to get everything together to announce the new superintendent March 2nd.
So April, we can take it to the NSBA.
Well, April is the one where all the school changes are made, and so you want to make sure that the superintendent is in position in March, at least been named, and has input then in all of the April changes, because there will be some domino effect.
So it looks to me like superintendent from the 12th of February, until the end of February would be potentially our time to determine
Yeah.
who to interview and to get those interviews
Correct.
done.
Correct.
So that's only a
2-week time period.
Yes,
That's
it's
what
tight.
it's tight.
It's tight.
John, Laurie mentioned just that Ogden had 37 candidates, just to give you a reference of how many applied.
And that's okay, that's good.
Yeah, no,
That's good.
There's gonna be some needing to vet those down.
Well, vet them down
For
is
the-
also,
for the
you
committees.
know, you gotta go through that yellow process, get them,
Yep.
make sure they're ready before you can announce it, otherwise, yeah, I would agree.
Richard, why don't we look at brochure a
Okay,
little bit?
yeah, let me mention just one other thing. Oh, sorry.
Did we settle on how many citizen?
It's gonna be, I think it's gonna end up roughly close to 30.
But I mean, per board member, is it gonna be 3
About
or
4.
We were shooting at 4, but they may
3 to
not all
4.
have 4.
4?
3 to 4.
Okay, 4 will be the.
Let me just mention one other thing that I think is crucial to that stakeholder committee, and that is that you have that committee review these applications individually, and so it's not collectively as a committee, that each person comes and then they complete that instrument, that rubric that the superintendent talked about for each candidate. And then they turn that data over to you as a board. So that the committee doesn't, formally make any decisions. They don't, discuss the candidates. This is individual work, because we want to get the perspective of that secondary teacher. We want the perspective of the elementary teacher, and not the perspective of everybody trying to come down and agree on something. It just works a lot better if each of them do it individually, because then they go, you know what? It doesn't matter what anybody else thinks, this is what I think. And you'll get some really valuable input. Now, let me just mention what Robert, and I think where the direction he was going with his question, and that is as far as the interviews then go, because this will come up. There'll be people on that committee and they're gonna go, okay, well, I've got, that work done there, so then is 1 or 2 of us or 3 or 4 of us gonna be a part of the interview process? Okay? And that gets to be a tough question, so now we're starting to talk about tough decisions. And we have found the very best thing is you go right back to the state code. And the state code says the Board of Education shall make that appointment. And so the 7 of you are the ones who need to be there in making that decision. I think, the idea of having somebody from the committee to being on the interviews is great, but then the thing that happens is now we've got 7 of you, and so somebody's sitting here interviewing, and then we've got a couple of other people over here, so pretty soon the candidates, they're not sure who are they interviewing here with, because they may say something that offends one of the committee members over here, and they don't work for them, they work for you. And so we found that it's just ideal when it's just you as a board that makes that decision.
Already, if we've done it with integrity, we will have the input of those outside.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. So, okay, well, anyhow, so let's get to the brochure, and so here is just some samples of that, and I brought just the most recent ones. So, like, here's the one from Granite, okay? And here's the one from Alpine. And then you guys can just pass these around. I think I only brought 6 of them. There's the one from Jordan that I did. Here's the one from Canyons. And then you guys can look at and pass them back and forth. I got a small district one. It's kind of an interesting little brochure. And then this is the one from Davis. Now, I think as you look through there, it's kind of interesting. The one from Alpine, have you got the Alpine one? Granite. You've got the Alpine one. This one from Alpine was kind of interesting because when you look at that one, it almost looks like an infomercial rather than an announcement for a superintendent position. But that's what they wanted. They were so proud of all the things that they do. They wanted those in that brochure. Now, I would have to say that this one was not near as effective in recruiting as the one that I think, that Janice has here, from Canyons. Even though there's a lot of promotional stuff in there, that one was pretty effective. But interesting enough, the one that Paul's looking at here is so simple, but that one right there generated more interest than the Alpine one did.
How about this one? The Granite one, because the Granite one again.
And the Granite one was a great one. That generated a lot of interest.
Right there. Not there.
That really, that tells you everything they need to know.
This Jordan
I'm
one,
with you.
Jordan one looks
That's
good to
what
me.
So they're all just a little bit different,
Yes,
but,
that's exactly
but again, it's so important so we can communicate out to people, you know, this is Weber School District. And so that we get the information that you guys want to have in there, and we can make it.
Will this go out to voters? Who, in what presentation? What will be the format? How will we get this out?
Okay, great question. So there's some things that we would do that automatically of what we do. And then obviously we want that on, you know, your district website.
Right.
And then we will list it on a number of other websites within the state or however far you want us to broadcast it. Oh, yeah. And so we'll get it out to them.
And so if somebody shows an interest, you mail them one, or they ask for one,
You
or
know,
they just look on the website?
You know, both places. So that was a really great question that Doug asked. You know, do we mail one out, or, you know, do we wait for them to ask for one, just put it on the website? And the answer is, we want to do both.
So we carry them in our car.
You ready for this?
Yes. Yep, so you can hand them out everywhere that you go. Because the thing I found, if you just do it electronically, all of you know how easy it is to see that email and delete it. Okay, if I get this in front of you, Jan, you know, then you put it on your desk and then you have to actually take it and throw it into the garbage.
I like the ones that really highlight what our survey would have said.
Yeah, because you've done great work with that.
Yeah, that way it makes them, that's another level, people think they have involvement. If I took the survey and it's on the brochure, I go, oh, yeah, they're using my info, you know?
So I think the bottom line is we want to make sure we can get that as far and wide as we can. And again, you know, part of it is to your internal people. Because there could be some of them that may not be interested until they see that, and then they go, gosh, maybe I will think about doing that. And that's the people we want to get. We want to get it. We don't want somebody that's out there that's looking for a job. Okay? We want somebody that's already got a job, and we want to go steal them and get them to come here. So whether it's a principal at Weber,
Yeah.
Or wherever they're at, that's who we want to get. We want to find somebody that's got a proven track record and know that they've had some experience and they're, you know, totally capable of being able to come in and do this job. So wherever they're at. And then the bottom line, I think that you have to keep in mind, no matter all the things we've talked about here, is we go through this process, in the end, it's you who will make that decision. And the law is very flexible for you and gives you the latitude of being able to hire whoever you want when it comes down to it. Yes, Doug?
It seems to me that once we do the interviewing on this board, that with the elected officials, the stakeholder committee just gives us a short list to interview from. Am I understanding that right?
Yeah. And credibility.
Yeah.
To the process. We are going to make the decision. I would give it to Jeff.
Yeah, and not even give you a short list.
It's our job.
Yeah, it's your job, and it's not to give you a short list. They're going to give you, as the superintendent described, they're just giving you a whole bunch of data, and they'll tell you, and that data is so valuable.
Yeah, because you might pick, if they pick your short list, you might want someone that's not on their list. You don't want their input.
That's what Richard said.
Yeah,
You
to
have
that
you can do it anywhere you want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Richard, is there a way that we go from their data to today we looked at what the survey brought in, and there's high trends that come out. So will we have a way to take that data, or will somebody help us disaggregate that data for better to make that a little more easy to read? Because if we get, let's say we get 40 applicants, and I say, oh, this one looks really good, oh, this one looks really good, oh, this one looks really good, according to our assessments of our community. But is there a way to kind of say, well, 40 of our people said this was their number one. They liked this, they did the best on this particular asset or whatever. Is there a way to look at that?
You know, there is, and we've had a number of districts where they've had the business administrator put together an analysis of that.
Is that not working?
But it works okay. I can tell you the thing that has worked probably the very best is when you as a board member have gone through so that you can say, I read every one of those evaluations.
Okay, I think that's good. I would also like to be able to see, because I might get skewed just by who it is.
Yeah. And that's where, you may want to have Robert put together some kind of an analysis of that, put that in, and there's a number of them I can referring to where the VA has
I'd like to
done.
see both. I mean, all of them, I'd like to see both, not one or the other.
Yeah.
I think, gosh, it scares me that I might be skewed by what I know or what I think I know.
Yeah. Well, that's some of the tough questions here that you're getting to now, and so you guys can decide that. Let me mention just one thing if I could, and then we'll kind of wrap it up and see if there's any other questions. So as far as the number of candidates are concerned, okay, I think that this is just a little bit of what the real world looks like right now, because I mentioned about how difficult and challenging that job is. And all of those that you've looked at there, we had somewhere between 12 and 15 candidates. Yeah. And I think we need to realize that if we get 12 or 15 here, I will be really happy. Now, those 12 or 15, let me tell you, they were all just outstanding candidates. And I would say probably, in all of those there was probably 6 people who could have done the job. 6 of them that had all the qualifications, had all of the ability, all of the experience. And it just come right down to the board and going, you know what? Yeah, this is the person we connect with. This is the one that, man, we've got the confidence, and I saw that in there, they've got our trust, our confidence, and they can do the job. And so that's kind of where that it comes down to. But I think we need to just be realistic and know that's the kind of numbers we're looking at right now. So,
Richard, may I ask one more question
Sure.
about that? When we get to that point, is that a closed meeting because we're discussing character?
yes.
Absolutely. So that doesn't have to be an open?
No,
We would go into, thank you, we would go into a closed session because, boy, there is going to be some really tough conversations among yourself, and they're all good ones. They're tough, but they're all good. And and each of you can be able to say, hey, well, this is how I feel about that candidate. This is my reaction, and probably everybody else is going to go, gosh, yeah, that's how I feel too.
the only time that the candidates will be announced, correct me if I'm wrong, would be the next board meeting when we announce it. Will be the only time it will be made public, once we
Now,
make it.
Richard,
Everything else will be behind.
sometimes I've seen finalists announced. What are your
That's a good
thoughts on
question.
that?
Oh boy, I'll tell you that when you're asking now some really good questions, and my answer to that one is that I don't like that.
Is that something that's forced through a grammar request, or is that a decision that a board makes to announce the final?
You know, and Canyons is one that, for some reason, they felt like they needed to do that to announce the 3 finalists. And, you know, and I found that, and Granite was kind of bordering on that, wanting to do it, and I told him, I said, the thing that I see is if there's these candidates out there and they go, okay, so you three right here are gonna be the 3 finalists, and we don't select you, but we select Janice, then everybody knows
that
they didn't get the job. And so then somebody back home goes, well, how come? You know, what's the matter with that guy?
Yeah.
And you know, and there's not anything wrong with them.
The next time they apply.
Yeah, and so then there'll be a lot of people who won't apply, because they're gonna ask me, or they're gonna ask Superintendent, so is the board gonna announce the finalists? And is the board gonna do this in closed session, or are they gonna do it in open? And, well, I'll tell you, yeah, they wanna know, and that's where all of these smart decisions need to be made. But I wouldn't, announce those finalists. I don't know of any reason that you have to.
Yeah, well, not only are you gonna unsettle the people that didn't make the final 3, you're gonna unsettle the 2 people that didn't make the final, you know, you've got layers of upset people.
Yes, and so here's what I would suggest, not even suggest, because you're headed in that direction right now, which is a great direction. And that is, you talked about those last 2 weeks of February, you know. So when we get that information back from that stakeholder committee, then for you as a board to move on it, let's get it done, and then we get the announcement made.
Because they're gonna be anxious as well.
Yeah, and I think that you know, moving quickly and thoughtfully through that process, I think instead of dragging it out, I think it will be to your benefit.
What do you think, Rich? Should we schedule some stuff in, at least pencil in it about candidates, so at least know?
You know, I would maybe not quite at this point.
Should we wait till your citizen committee meets and then go from there?
Yeah.
Because we at least got a solid on that date.
The thing that happens, and that is when you start getting down to these meetings and things that you've got to do, give yourself some flexibility. Because if you say, hey, we're going to, you know, we're going to meet on these days here, then you find out, oh gosh, he's going on vacation, or she's going on vacation, or something comes up. Yes.
Yeah, I agree.
Yep. And just kind of let John kind of do the directing here. Let him be the board president. Okay, now it looks like maybe we need to schedule a meeting on, you know, for these 3 days. Okay, and everybody's gonna just need to know that, hey, it's gonna be sometime, you know, in February and March, till middle of April till we get this job done. Everybody needs to keep their calendars open as much as possible and be able to respond quickly.
Question about exactly logistics. Let's say when somebody applies, that could be a sensitive thing for somebody applying. Maybe they want to do that in confidence or concern.
Say that
so
again, Doug.
If somebody's the actual logistics of the application process, they want it to be in confidentiality because maybe they're one of the other 41 districts. So how do we go about having them apply? Do they say confidence, send it to this app?
It goes to Richard.
Reputation.
Okay.
The
applications go to everywhere.
Oh, okay, so it comes to you so that they can have confidence, and then you will give us, say there's 15 applicants, and the committee plus us, we interview 5. Do we have to respond to the other 10, or do they just, because they didn't get called for an interview, do they assume they weren't selected? Or what would be the right thing to do out of sensitivity to them? And then my second part of that question is, the 5 that we interview, we select one, of course we communicate they're selected. What do we do with the other 4? Just by a letter saying thank you for your application,
Yes.
we've gone another direction? See what I'm saying, we wanna make sure we don't offend anybody.
Yeah, so, oh boy, that's really important there. And the thing that we can do is, again, just look at us as an extension of your staff. We'll do whatever you'd like. I can tell you as far as with respect to those 4, the one thing that I saw in Canyons for them to do, which was really classic, that was the board president called each one of them and just thanked them for applying, because you never know, they may want to apply
For something else.
something else in your district.
Yeah.
And they're gonna remember that.
Yeah.
And so, anyhow, that was a classy thing. As far as the other candidates, Doug, we can take care of that. I can send them a letter, I can call them, and in Granite, they want me to just send them an email.
So you didn't make the short list?
Yeah.
Or just something?
Yeah, and thank them for it, and so we can handle that about any way you want, or, you may say, hey, yeah, we want to, whatever you'd like to do.
For all of say we get 30 applicants, we communicate with all 30.
Yeah. But we're gonna get between 12 and 15.
Oh, yeah.
I'm gonna keep saying that because
It's okay for the 10 or 11 or whatever that we don't interview, we need to communicate.
Yeah, then we need to treat them with respect and thank them for it.
You know what?
Yeah, that's my, we don't want to offend anybody.
What do you think of that? If we get 12, we go down to 4. That gives us how many to split up, and we have every one of us call somebody. We're all part of this board. I mean, I'll call him as president, but if you got, I'm a member from the board that says, hey, we interview process. I could call every one of them.
I think it's best for the president to call.
Do you? I'll call.
That way, and they know that
It
it's-
sounds consistent too. If I have a conversation.
I just wanted to make sure. We have another guy that's an upper authority that has these buildings that are being dedicated. He likes to pass that around. That would make it easy. But I'll do it. That's not a problem.
Yeah, that's a whole lot. That's really what needs to happen. Just as it comes from Richard.
I'll call. I'll call.
Do we need to arrive at something about the brochure?
Well, and so I think the thing that you ought to do at the brochure, so where's Jeff at? Because we need him as part of this conversation there. Jeff, so they're asking about the brochure. So here's what I would suggest that you would do about the brochure.
What's really happening, it's not just an announcement about
Where's that one from you? That one.
No, I know. Because I was thinking, oh my goodness.
Do you think, sufficient information from this, from the,
Yep, I think we will. Yeah, we'll take a step.
Our history.
Jeff.
Richard,
Okay.
which was the most effective?
In the community. So
You
let's
said
see.
one was simple and effective. Which one was it?
The one from, this is the one, it was so simple, but I think for your district, we need to go a little more. I would probably say the one from Granite.
That's what I think.
I like this one and what's from Granite.
Yeah, so for some reason, this just attracted people. But I think, this one right here was highly effective because we had some great candidates for that. And there was, a lot of them were internal candidates and some that weren't going to apply who did when I saw that brochure.
This is where they would put those that we just brought down.
I love that.
And I like that myself.
and then we design it and give it to you. Is that correct?
Well, so here's the thing, in some cases, some of those brochures, they almost all look similar, they've all got a blue color to them. But some of those were designed by the district, the others were ones that we designed. So we have Megan in our office that Janice knows, it's graphic designer.
Who did the grant?
could do that. And so the thing that I would suggest we do, just as I was talking with Jeff, why don't you, I'll leave this, but why don't you let us take and create a draft of it, and then we will get that out to all of you. The thing I'll probably do is I'll probably send it to Jeff first, you know, because he might go, well, you missed this, you know, something in there before we get it circulated very far. But we'll create a draft, get it to him, and then let him kind of be the point person, you know, of where it goes. After that, if that's okay with you.
That's great. You'll incorporate.
Yes, and so we're going to do that along with some of this other data points.
Yeah, right.
That he gave to me. Yes. Yeah. And it's what it'll be just a drafting, so as you look at that, you know, you may, you know, say, hey, we want to add this or take something out or change it. And so certainly that's what we want. We want that feedback from you, and then particularly if there's some colors that you want us to use, then we will use some.
Richard, can we make sure that our search brochure aligns very closely with our rubric? So that we're not asking for something in here that doesn't align with what we're asking our community people to assess them on. I just think it's critical that this is really closely aligned with what that search committee is going to look at.
And so this would be kind of what I would say, and that would be, let's make sure we get in here what you want, and then we will change the rubric.
Okay, I don't care, but I would think it needs to come from our search, from our survey to there, the high things, and then from there to our rubric.
And I think we could have Jeff take that rubric and change that to make sure that it does align with that.
Well, and Megan from their office would be phenomenal at just inserting our photos.
Yeah, and so that will be the thing I'm gonna go hit Jeff up about then, if we like this.
I'm sure Lane will have that.
Okay, so if we've got some photos, that would be great that we could put into it.
Share as far as photos.
Yeah. So if you could get those to Jeff, and then, hey Jeff, we're talking about photos. This is the one I like. And so if you guys could get some photos to us that you think that represents, you know, your district, or maybe fits in line with some of this here.
There's some things that are like of the area, or it's all kids, all students. This is all kids and students.
You are working.
Let me just ask them real quick. Hey, can I ask you a real quick question on the brochure? Do you want it all? One of my grandchildren.
It's got to say
School-related, student-related, anything like a picture of snow basin.
For a nationwide search.
That's what I'm wondering. So not maybe the front. Might be Ben Lomond, it might be Alpine Valley, you know, snow basin or something, but mostly kids, mostly schools, but something, so like what Paul said, somebody who's from outside the state says, oh, yeah, because what Pam had pulled together from the county on this sheet, you can see there's some information about Weber County. Home of Weber State, outdoor recreation includes camping, hiking, mountain bike trails, 3 major ski resorts. You know, so someone who's from outside says, hey, that sounds like a great place and a good district, and you know, so is that okay?
Yeah.
We'll get you a couple of drone shots of snow basin. Lane is a certified pilot, but so that's kind of the one that you're. Okay.
If you wanted, you could take a picture of Roosevelt with the R falling down and send it on that. Say we just passed a lawn.
Well, and that's good information.
That's good
I mean,
information.
it's good information to know, that a bond has just been approved, and I'd even say at the rate that it was approved. 60%, 60% in this climate is unbelievable on a bond. So, and that's a tribute to land.
And some of that stuff right there, and some of that's pretty good stuff to do.
Number of students, graduation rates.
Yeah, a few data points that way.
Yeah, a few, I like a few.
And a few.
Yeah, highlights.
That looks way too clear.
It's busy for me too.
It's way too busy there.
I'm with you.
Bullet
When
point.
I look at something, I want bang, 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 right?
Okay.
Okay, wow.
Are you out of here? You're gonna say, you don't think you. So what the suggestion would be that the board, phone call, short list.
I know, I feel bad, but no, in the middle, that was, they have like,
I can only spell 2 or 3 words anyway, so.
I'll make sure that we're short.
That'd be really professional. Okay,
John, well, we have one more thing that we need to
yeah, so
process. Richard, thank you so much
Yes,
for
thank
coming
you.
out. Yeah, thank you.
well, thanks for all of your work, Superintendent, getting this all organized and put together, and thank you.
Thanks, Richard, well done.
Well,
Appreciate it.
so, you know, a lot of the work now is gonna be right over here, the superintendent kind of coordinating all of that, and once we get the brochure out there, then we'll just see what happens.
So we'll just wait for the draft to come from the superintendent.
Yeah, and then we'll send that to you when we get that brochure. Okay,
All right.
thanks again.
With
and,
that board, you can talk.
Okay, and then
Lane,
we'll see.
Lane. So board, where's Jan? Oh, right there. If you would do me a favor, please, on your citizens committee, either send me an email or text. There's 3 things I'd like: the person's name, the occupation, and a telephone number or an email, so that I know where we're at when we're talking about
I just
section.
dropped in 3 in case
That's fine.
I need one more to fill in.
If you're comfortable with 3, just stay at 3. And that's good. We want you to just be comfortable with what you've got. Once you give me that list, if there is somebody that may need an extra one that's already suggested in one of the schools, I will work with Lane to get that done. But then I'm just going to forward that to Lane. So we'll need email, or you want a regular? Would you prefer?
What can the legislative process is engaged?
Send it to me. I'll gather
So to get a legislature from a legislature.
Very tough.
Phone number.
That would be
Very
tough.
tough.
It would be
Almost
tough.
impossible.
Yeah.
It'd be almost impossible.
And then I will just forward it once we get it. If we're okay, I'll just forward that whole list that he can invite. Will that work? All right. Board, we have one more item, and that would be number 5. Review of policy 6600, I believe. Naming of a school facility. Superintendent, please.
Yeah, thank you, President. This is such a good process. I love to see the board get started on this, and I'm just going to reinforce something. My loyalty is to you, and I will not put my thumb on the scale on this whatsoever. I can't reiterate that enough, but I'm going to just continue to make sure that the process is fair, transparent, impartial, and that's to protect you and the organization. So just know that I'm not going to be engaged in any way trying to. I've had conversations with those who are interested, but I'll have a conversation with anybody who's interested in the spirit of what Richard said, and that is the board wants to hire the best candidates. So I'll just share information with anybody who's interested. Okay, policy 6600. We've been kind of pressed by capital facilities to get moving on this, and there's a reason we delayed just a little bit. It had to do with the work that Daniel Wade did, because we wanted to make sure who the board member was. But as they're constructing the high school, colors and so forth really are a big deal, because they want to build that into the building itself. We know now that that high school being Paul's boundary. If you look at the naming of school facility 6600, and I'd say that also lends itself toward picking colors and so forth. This is the policy that applies, and I would recommend that you would give me the nod of approval to start the process, because our capital facilities committee is really in need of getting this. So again, primarily you're looking at number one. The committee shall consist of the following: a board member, a building administrator, a PTA representative, teacher, student leader, community council rep, classified employee, local community leader. And it's directed by, the committee is chaired by the second, in this case, the secondary director, Gina Butters. And so.
What about the new elementary school?
Well, we're not.
We're just one committee.
Yeah, right. No. We'll form another committee. The one that's pressing right now is the high school.
Gotcha.
So right now we're just really looking at the high school. We'll probably be coming very soon with the junior high, and last with the elementary, because all three are slated to open the fall of 24. We've got plenty of time on the elementary school.
The junior high will be pretty critical too, because they will also have colors and
Yeah. So board, with your approval, we can move forward, beginning this process, asking Gina Butters to chair the committee, knowing that Paul will represent the board on that committee, and then we'll put together the other members of that committee. It's a little tricky because it's a new school, not open.
we don't know the boundaries.
We don't know the boundaries, but what you do know is that you take the 2-mile radius from the school. Remember the transportation law that everybody inside of 2 miles walks? So as far as boundaries go, you at least begin the process knowing if you're within 2 miles of that school, most likely you're going to attend that school.
It would be a building administrator. We don't have a building yet.
We don't. And so, typically if you're looking at naming let's say a football field or a softball field or something like that, you know what building it is. And so we will select probably an individual from Fremont and an individual from Roy, maybe, we'll select a couple so that we've got good balance on there, knowing that, those are the individuals that we'll draw from those schools to ultimately staff those schools. All the kids will be coming from there.
So, So, Dr. Stevens, I've had several parents approach me on boundaries.
Yeah.
So that would come after the
Yeah.
naming of
So
the
then, yeah. So this isn't the boundary.
Right. I just wanted to make sure that.
Yeah.
'cause
This
that
is
will
the
be
this is the
entirely
process to begin looking at a name and selecting colors.
different. Okay, and so, we can be very transparent with them and say.
You should be.
It really doesn't matter what the boundaries are. If you were to work on that committee, it would be.
Yeah.
Aside from whether your child is going to attend there or not.
And Jan, I know that there's already conversations, curiosity about what the boundaries are. Personally, I can't see any advantage in identifying the boundaries in 2021 for a school that will open in 2024. In fact, I can see actually a lot of negatives associated with that.
Well, it's going to be crazy.
So I would suggest that it's someone else's decision. That's something that can hold for a time, because to me the potential negative impacts are greater than any positive that I can identify. I don't know what the positives are, knowing 2.5 years in advance what the boundaries of the high school are.
Well, and your process has been good on that in the town halls and all of that.
There's a process for that, and we'll follow that process.
Let me suggest this, what I'm getting from some constituents, and the fact that we haven't opened high school in 30 years, so I don't know that. But, and again, I have to be very careful. Sports has driven around a lot of these people that are talking to me, and they're saying, are you going to have a senior class the first year that school opens? And if so, where's my kid going to play football? Fremont High, Roy High, Weber High? And having said that, do we know where those boundaries are so that we can maybe send them to Weber and know we're going to pull them over the senior year because they'll play? But we'll have a turf football field, so you should be able to play. I don't know who makes that decision. That says, well, we'll have a senior class, and we will have sports, or no, we won't. We'll start at juniors. That's the people, and
That's a lot of the question.
I've had that question myriad of times.
Typically, a senior class is given some choice. When Fremont opened, the senior class had choice. Some stayed at Weber, some stayed at Roy. In Fremont's case, the majority of kids went to Fremont. That was just I was teaching at Lawquist at the time, and that was a high school that they wanted their own identity. But still, the senior class was given their choice.
So they had a senior class the first year?
They did have a senior class, but you had some seniors. You had some seniors who lived within the Fremont boundaries who chose to either finish at Weber or finish at Roy. So Weber or Fremont drew about 1,000 kids from Weber and about 500 kids from Roy. That was roughly how Fremont was made up.
That went a little different in Farmington.
They did. They didn't have a senior class.
So, but John, Fremont did have Luke was a junior at the time and went from Weaver to Fremont, but they did have senior class. They did have all the sports.
Did they?
Yeah, they did.
See, I never knew if they had it.
It was.
I only heard that
But we were still right around 1,300 students at that time when we opened Fremont that first year.
Did they know going into that again for that prep? When they built that school again, I don't know.
I think they started announcing about a year before.
Okay.
Because they hired the teachers probably about 6 months in advance.
See, I would have thought that would be a principal call, but I don't know.
They started interviewing
Give families that
during that time.
I would think that you're going to start with sports. That high school is going to open now. They might be.
I've been there. I've seen it.
They might be juniors. A lot of them might be juniors. But I would start the high school with all the sports teams.
And a full. That's what I'm thinking about.
And you'd give, in my opinion, you'd give the senior class some choice.
Yeah, there you go.
I like that.
And that's what
that senior class.
Yep.
And then they need to start attending.
I just don't want to say that and have somebody in a director position say we're not going to do that with the changes. But at the same time, people are asking. People want to know. It's new, good chance, do the right identity, go to the school. But if you're not going to have it, then I'm going to stay where we're at.
Oh, I'd have sports.
And I'd have
They'll have it.
We're gearing up.
Bring them together.
Yeah,
they have.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, we're absolutely gearing up that all of those extracurricular activities will be provided year one at the high school.
That'd be a perfect message to get out there.
That's good. That's enough for right now.
That's enough for everyone.
That's awesome.
Just a question, quick question. UHSAA for 6A, 5A, 4A will probably change classifications. They'll get involved with that, won't they?
I'm sure there might. It just depends on the timing of when the new classifications are made. But I could see once the new high school opens, I could see everybody, Weber, Fremont, Roy, coming down. It'd be neat to see all 5 of our high schools in the same region again.
Yeah.
And I could see that because I think their student body, their student enrollment is going to be very close.
And that's up to the boundary committee, and they're going to try to make them equal, right? The boundaries.
Well, you want to just be able to open a high school with a reasonable number of people, and that's about 1,600, which will leave everybody else about that.
That's up to the boundary committee.
And the high school association, they make a determination when they do it. That was the problem with Farmington, is they said, we're just going to count your sophomore and junior classes.
So they stayed down.
And
way low.
they were still in the lower classification. All of a sudden, they got a third class in there, and they were one of the biggest 6A schools, and they were still at a 5A because of the policies of the Utah High School Athletic Association of just selecting, or just saying, if you're building a new school, we're only going to count your sophomores and juniors.
Is that UHSA
Yeah.
that does that?
Maybe they'll change that because it was a problem at Syracuse. I mean, at Farmington, wasn't it?
It was.
Yeah.
All right, board.
We gotta tell them what their population is before they can give us the classification, right?
We've come to the end of our agenda. Anything else? If not, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn. Moved by Paul, second by Dean. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Thank you for your time this morning. It's been very productive. Have a great weekend.